Chapter 1. The plane landed smoothly in a city. Just as she stepped out of the airport, Eleanor Vance received a thank you message from a client abroad. Miss Vance, Mr. Hunt is lucky to have you by his side. To secure this project, you not only drank until you were sick, but also managed to compress 10 days of work into 3. All just to rush back to the country to celebrate his birthday. I don't admire many people, but you are one of them. Here's to our successful partnership, and I wish you and Mr. Hunt a wonderful evening. Eleanor's lips curved into a faint smile as she typed back a simple thank you. She took out the gift she had prepared for Ethan Hunt from her bag, examining it in her palm. After a dozen hours of turbulence, it was thankfully still in one piece. Ever since she was 21, she had been by Ethan Hunt's side, serving as his most capable assistant and his unannounced lover. For 9 years, she had spent every single one of his birthdays with him. This time, she didn't want it to be an exception. His schedule indicated he had a business dinner tonight. With no time to rest, Eleanor hailed a cab straight for the private club, planning to pick him up and go home together. Arriving at the club, she walked directly to the VIP room. Pushing the door open, her eyes were met with the sight of a young girl with a ponytail and a somewhat naive face. Eleanor froze for a moment before the young girl broke the silence and introduced herself. "Hello, Miss Vance. I'm Daisy Reed, an intern in the executive office. I'm the one accompanying Mr. Hunt to the dinner tonight." Hearing this, Eleanor frowned in displeasure. What was the executive office thinking, sending an intern to accompany him to a business dinner? She glanced around the room but didn't see Ethan. She turned back to the girl and asked, "Where's Mr. Hunt?" Daisy looked out into the hallway with a bewildered expression and said cautiously, "Mr. Hunt went to buy me shoes. The heels I wore today were a bad fit and rubbed my heel raw. When he saw it, he told me to wait and insisted on going to the mall to buy me a new pair. Didn't you see him on your way up, Miss Vance?" Eleanor's body went rigid, her heart feeling as if it had suddenly split open. Having been with Ethan for so many years, she knew him better than anyone. He was cold, indifferent, and hated any unexpected incidents that disrupted his work or life. She remembered a time when she was running a high fever, and the first aid kit was right beside him, yet he wouldn't even bother to hand her the medicine, let alone in a situation like this, where he would actually condescend to run downstairs to buy shoes for an intern. She finally began to truly re-evaluate the young girl before her. Delicate, innocent, with a pure light shining in her eyes just as she had been when she first met Ethan. She looked a bit like her 21-year-old self. While she was lost in thought, Ethan returned, carrying an exquisite shoebox with a large pink bow on the packaging, which looked completely out of place with his high-end, custom-tailored suit. He walked in and glanced at Eleanor. He didn't seem surprised by her appearance, nor did he ask about her business trip. Instead, he walked straight past her, raised an eyebrow to signal Daisy to sit on the sofa, and then half knelt on the floor, took the shoes out of the box, and personally put them on for her. "How are they? Do they fit? Does it still hurt?" A rare gentleness filled Ethan's eyes. From a distance, Eleanor watched everything quietly, a heavy stone suddenly pressing down on her heart. But before she could react, Daisy let out a small yawn. Ethan chuckled. "Sleepy." With that, he pulled the young girl up, ready to leave. Seeing that Ethan was about to go, someone in the room quickly called out to him. "It's so early, Mr. Hunt. We haven't finished these drinks." Hearing someone pressuring him to drink, Daisy remembered the purpose of her trip. She was about to go drink when Ethan subtly stopped her, then cast a commanding look at Eleanor. Chapter 2, having been with him through so many of these dinners, a single glance was all it took for Eleanor to understand. Daisy was here to take the drinks for him, but now, he was unhesitatingly pushing her out to take the drinks for Daisy. Who on earth was this Daisy Reed? 1,000 thoughts swirled in her mind, but this was clearly not the time to dwell on them. She forced a smile and walked over gracefully. Having just been discharged from a hospital abroad, the pungent smell of alcohol in the glass made her stomach cramp uncontrollably. Her face slightly pale, she pursed her lips, closed her eyes, and downed the glass in one go. Eleanor went to the restroom and threw up twice. When she returned, she found that Ethan and Daisy were already in the car. She glanced at her watch. The hour hand was just shy of midnight. Even though there was an outsider present, the gift had to be given on the day. She quickly took the gift box from her bag and, with slightly unsteady steps, handed it to Ethan. Happy birthday, Mr. Hunt. Beside them, Daisy's eyes widened when she saw the gift. Mr. Hunt, is it your birthday today? Seeing that the car was about to leave, Daisy quickly spoke up. Mr. Hunt, wait for me for a second. With that, she jumped out of the car and ran off. And Ethan, who was usually incredibly impatient, merely watched her run off with a faint smile, then actually told the driver to wait. More than 10 minutes later, Daisy returned, panting, carrying a bag. Mr. Hunt, I'm sorry, I didn't know it was your birthday. Happy birthday. It was a very childishly wrapped box containing a snow globe from a boutique window, a stark contrast to Ethan's cold and noble demeanor. Eleanor used to love buying these little trinkets, but he had always sneered at them, looking down on them the most. Now, holding that box, a doting smile actually appeared in his eyes. Thank you. I like it very much. Eleanor felt a void in her heart, and a cold wind seemed to blow right through her, sending shivers down her spine. Back at the apartment, Ethan stood by the window, holding the snow globe Daisy had given him. The corners of his lips were slightly raised, as if he found it utterly adorable. Meanwhile, the watch she had brought back from abroad was tossed carelessly on the sofa, the box having fallen to the floor. That watch had cost her an entire year's bonus, and she had pulled many strings to buy it. It was a matching set with the one on her own wrist, but it seemed he didn't like it. Eleanor quietly walked up behind him and wrapped her arms around his waist from behind. Happy birthday. Ethan's body stiffened, then he gave a faint. She pressed her face against his back and spoke again. A month after your birthday, it will be my birthday. Seeing no reaction from him, she emphasized it again. I've been by your side for 9 years without realizing it. Time flies, I'm about to turn 30. Ethan frowned and gently pulled her away. I gave you a supplementary card. Just buy whatever you like. After saying this, he placed Daisy's gift in the bedside drawer and then turned indifferently to take a shower. The sound of dripping water echoed, each drop feeling like a hole being drilled into her heart. She looked down at the slightly ajar drawer. Inside was a glass jar filled with many colorful folded paper stars. Many years ago, she had folded them for him. Back then, he must have found her cute, because he put the jar in the drawer and said casually, "Fill this jar with stars, and I'll marry you before you turn 30. Now, she was about to turn 30, and the jar was nearly full, but he seemed to have forgotten his promise. Chapter 3, After a sleepless night, Eleanor arrived at the office the next day to find Daisy standing before her, notebook in hand, very early. Miss Vance, Mr. Hunt told me to learn a few things from you. She looked up at the young girl in front of her, with her clear yet faintly foolish eyes, and remained silent for a moment, saying nothing. Training an intern was never something a person of her level was supposed to do. But since Ethan had ordered it, she had to comply. What Eleanor hadn't expected was just how inadequate Daisy's abilities were. After a full day's work, she had taught what needed to be taught and said what needed to be said. But Daisy was like a greenhorn who had never set foot in a workplace, and she threw the entire executive office into chaos. Eleanor asked her to fax a document to a client, but she used the wrong machine and shredded all the important documents. Watching everyone's efforts go down the drain, Eleanor's vision went black with anger. She furiously called in the director of human resources to question him. How on earth did you people hire her? How could someone of her caliber get into the executive office? The HR director looked helpless. Miss Vance, there was nothing we could do. It's what Mr. Hunt wanted. Eleanor froze. The hand holding the pen trembled, and a drop of ink fell onto the white paper, smudging her name into a black blur. She asked, feeling a sense of self-humiliation, "What do you mean, what he wanted?" At this, the HR director seemed to have opened a floodgate. No one but you has ever been allowed in the president's office. But as soon as this Daisy Reed arrived, Mr. Hunt made a special exception for her to nap on his office sofa. For important events, Mr. Hunt doesn't choose the more experienced secretaries. He insists on bringing the inexperienced Daisy. And another thing, last time Lisa complained about Daisy getting access to so much core work right after she joined, Mr. Hunt fired her without a word. You know, Lisa had been in the executive office for 5 years. After that, no one dared to target Daisy or say anything bad about her. Hearing all this, Eleanor's mind was in turmoil. She knew better than anyone how special Daisy was to Ethan, which was why she felt so flustered. In the afternoon, a partner company came to the group for a meeting. Everyone had arrived, but the meeting materials had yet to be distributed. Alina had assigned the task of distributing the materials to Daisy, but she was still nowhere to be seen. Alina stepped aside and dialed Daisy's number. The moment the call connected, she heard Daisy's tearful voice on the other end. "Miss Vance, I'm so sorry. I sprained my ankle coming down the stairs when I was printing the documents. I'll have someone else bring them over right away." Alina pressed her temples, about to speak, but Ethan, who was nearby and had overheard Daisy's voice, his expression changed instantly. He stood up abruptly and said coldly, "Meeting's canceled," then he strode out of the room. Alina's expression shifted slightly, not understanding why he would suddenly cancel a meeting, especially one of this scale. She immediately followed him out, only to see, at the turn of the staircase, Daisy sitting on the floor while Ethan carefully examined her injured foot. "Does it hurt?" Tears glistened in Daisy's eyes. She bit her lip and shook her head. "It doesn't hurt." Ethan sighed helplessly, then actually took a piece of candy from his pocket, unwrapped it, and put it in her mouth. Daisy's face lit up with surprise. She even forgot to cry. "Mr. Hunt, this is my favorite candy, how did you know?" Ethan's lips curved. "I have more if you want them. Suck on it if it hurts, and don't cry. Hang in there, I'll take you to the hospital. You're such a little girl, how can you get hurt just by walking?" With that, he bent down, scooped her up in his arms, and walked straight towards the elevator. And Alina, who had silently witnessed all of this from a distance, felt as if she had been plunged into an ice cave. She couldn't believe that the gentle, considerate man she was seeing before her was Ethan Hunt. He had always been meticulous and serious, always putting work first. Profit was what he valued most. But today, for Daisy, he had abruptly canceled a partnership meeting and chose to abandon a business partner to take her to the doctor. This was all utterly absurd. She couldn't help but follow, wanting to demand, in Ethan's eyes, what was Daisy, and what was she, Alina Vance? Chapter 4, reaching the elevator, she stopped. She felt a little ridiculous. He had never given her a title. All these years she had been by his side, she was a secretary, a housekeeper. But among all these roles, not a single one was girlfriend. What right did she have to question him? In the end, she did nothing, only able to go back and clean up the mess in silence. Ethan stayed with Daisy at the hospital for a day or two, before finally returning to the company. At the same time, the Chamber of Commerce's annual gala was being held in a city. In previous years, Alina had always accompanied Ethan, but this time, he insisted that Daisy attend as well. Alina tried her best to persuade him. The Chamber of Commerce gala is very important. All the big names in the business world will be there. Daisy is inexperienced and lacks seniority. It would be troublesome if she says the wrong thing. Let her attend other events. Ethan looked up coldly. That's precisely why she should go and get some exposure. Weren't you the same back then, knowing nothing and forged through trials like this? Alina's face paled, rendered speechless by his words. She may have been inexperienced back then, but she had been selected from 100 candidates, going through layer after layer of screening before finally emerging as the top choice to stand before Ethan. When she first started attending galas, she didn't know how to speak, so she desperately drank for him, even coming to work the next day after drinking until her stomach bled. Being forced to drink, being taken advantage of, being scolded by those in higher positions, she had endured it all. Back then, Ethan would always hold her after it was over and say that after experiencing all this, no one would ever be able to bring her down. She was the rose he had cultivated himself, born to cut through thorns. Now that she was strong enough to stand on her own, was he starting to cultivate another rose? But when they arrived at the gala, Alina realized just how ridiculous she had been. Daisy was never the rose he wanted to cultivate. She was the treasure he protected in the palm of his hand. She didn't have to deal with anyone's unreasonable behavior, nor did she have to drink and socialize. Wave after wave of people came and went, but Ethan kept her behind him, not letting her touch a single drop of alcohol. Seeing how protective he was of Daisy, who would dare to make a move on her? When Daisy got tired of standing, Ethan would protectively lead her to the rest area to sit down, personally bringing her several plates of her favorite fruits. Even when he stepped aside to chat with friends who were also at the gala, Daisy never left his line of sight, which extended no more than 3 meters. It was absurd. Originally, the secretary was there to serve the CEO, but now it had become the CEO serving the secretary. Alina couldn't bear to watch anymore. Plus, she had drunk a little too much, so she went to the restroom and splashed cold water on her face. The face in the mirror was more refined than before. Years of grinding in the business world had added a mature elegance to her. Ethan used to say she was too naive. She thought that when she grew to be capable and strong enough, she could finally stand by his side as an equal. But the cruel reality was that now, it seemed he no longer had eyes for her. After touching up her makeup and calming herself down, Alina walked out again. Around the corner, Ethan was chatting with a friend. Alina recognized the man. Leo Graham, the young master of the Graham Group. He had been expanding his overseas business for many years and had just returned to the country this year. He was one of Ethan's closest friends. Leo swirled the red wine in his glass with a carefree air, his gaze landing on Daisy not far away. "What's the deal with that little girl? The news has already spread through our circle. They say you're spoiling her to the heavens. Are you really into her? If you are, why haven't you made a move?" Ethan smirked. "I can't bring myself to. She's too well behaved, different from other girls. Besides, the more you care, the more you cherish. I still have some loose ends to clean up. I want to give her the best." Behind the door, Alina's body stiffened, her face instantly turning deathly pale. The loose ends he was talking about, was he referring to her? Chapter 5, the cold wind cut at her face like a knife. She stood blankly behind the door, her limbs turning to ice. If it were the old her, she probably would have stormed up to Ethan and demanded he make things clear. But she wasn't the reckless, impulsive 20-year-old girl anymore. She was about to turn 30. At 30, she no longer had the right to question Ethan Hunt. Some questions, when you already know the answer, become undignified to ask. But no matter how she tried to control it, her heart felt like it was being stabbed. Her 9 years of youth, what did they mean in Ethan's eyes? She was trembling, unable to stand steady, when Daisy, who had appeared behind her at some point, suddenly took her hand. "Miss Vance, I think I drank too much. I'm a little dizzy." Alina had to steady herself. "Then go get some rest." She helped Daisy to the car outside and let her rest inside. When she returned to the gala, Ethan noticed Daisy was gone and was searching for her with a cold face. Seeing his anxious expression, Alina's eyes stung. She fought back her disappointment and walked forward. "Daisy wasn't feeling well, so I let her go rest in the car." Hearing that Daisy was unwell, Ethan's brow furrowed into a deep crease. "I'll go check on her. I'm leaving this to you." With that, he didn't linger for another second, rushing out the door without hesitation. Alina's lips twisted into a bitter smile as she picked up a wine glass and walked into the crowd. Ethan was right. The more you care, the more you cherish. That's why he would let her go, to socialize and navigate the crowd. After a round of socializing, Alina was already half drunk. She put down her glass, intending to leave, but saw Leo Graham, who had been chatting with Ethan just moments before, being carried out by 2 bodyguards, dead drunk. She had heard about Leo's tolerance for alcohol from Ethan and knew his character. It was impossible for him to get this drunk at such a gala. Could it be that someone had drugged him? A chill ran down Alina's spine. Though she didn't know what had happened, she couldn't just stand by and do nothing. She followed the 2 men outside and rushed forward to block them. "Who are you? Where are you taking him?" The 2 men exchanged a look, then glared at Alina. "Mind your own business." Alina, a veteran of the business world, was no longer the little girl who would cry after being yelled at by a couple of thugs. She stepped forward to block them. "I said, let him go. If you don't, I'm calling the police." Amidst the commotion, Leo regained some consciousness. He struggled to push away one of the men holding him. As he was about to make another move, the man who had been pushed away pulled out a knife and swung it at Leo. Seeing the glint of the sharp blade, Alina didn't know where she found the courage, but she unhesitatingly threw herself in front of Leo. Look out! The moment the knife lunged, Leo, quick-witted and agile, kicked the man several meters away. Before the bodyguards could advance again, Leo warned them with extreme composure. "This place is full of people. If you make another move and mess this up for Chester Graham, do you think he'll let you off?" The 2 men exchanged a glance, dared not linger, and fled frantically into the darkness. After they had completely disappeared, Leo could no longer hold on and collapsed again. The drug must have taken full effect. No matter how many times she called his name, he didn't respond. Eleanor quickly called over 2 waiters, helped him to a room upstairs, and got some antidote soup, which she personally fed to him. Half an hour later, Leo finally woke up. Regaining consciousness, Leo frowned, rubbed his temples hard, and cursed softly under his breath. But upon seeing Eleanor by his side, he immediately composed himself, reverting to his usual carefree demeanor. "Thank you for tonight. If you hadn't stopped them, I might have been thrown into some woman's bed by Chester's men by now. If my old man found out about that, my business prospects in this country would be over." It was a well-known fact in a city that Leo and his half-brother did not get along. Eleanor just hadn't expected him to go to such lengths to frame Leo. Leo's eyes darkened. He suddenly remembered something, and his charming eyes looked at her again. "I have to ask, when that guy came at me with a knife, why did you risk your life to save me? Didn't you value your life?" Chapter 6. As expected of a city's famous playboy, a single glance from him could make one's heart race. Eleanor lowered her head, avoiding his eyes. "Because you're Ethan Hunt's friend, he wouldn't want anything to happen to you. If he were sad, she wouldn't be happy either." She swallowed the rest of her words. Leo's eyes flickered, and his gaze on her held a new spark of interest. Everyone in their circle said that Eleanor Vance loved Ethan Hunt to death. He hadn't expected her to love him to this extent. What a pity. He smiled thoughtfully and then said, "In any case, I owe you one. If you ever need anything, just ask. I'll make it happen." Eleanor hadn't had any ulterior motives when she helped him, so she didn't take his words to heart. After bidding him farewell, she went home. Ethan was already asleep when she returned. He hadn't even left a light on for her. She tiptoed to the bathroom with her pajamas, then quietly showered and lay down beside him. She turned on her side to hug him, but Ethan, in his sleep, rolled over, and her hand was mercilessly pushed away. Eleanor gave a bitter smile, curled herself into a small ball, and slept by the edge of the bed. The next day, Hunt Corporation held its mid-year ceremony, where several important awards would be presented to employees. Each award, besides public recognition, came with an additional cash prize of $15,000. The Employee of the Year award, in particular, was not only selected by him personally, but also presented by him. So, for the people in the company, the most important part of this award wasn't the prize money, but the personal affirmation from Ethan Hunt himself. Everyone knew how demanding he was. Over the years, very few people had earned his praise, and almost everyone in the company tacitly agreed that this award could only belong to Eleanor Vance. Her dedication to her work over the years was plain for all to see. To secure a project, she could stake out a client's building for a day and a night without food or sleep. At social functions, she would take any drink meant for Ethan. The number of consecutive days she had worked overtime at the company had broken the records of all previous veteran employees. Everyone called her a workaholic, but only she knew that only by working this hard could she make Ethan see her. Therefore, she desired this award, presented by him personally, more than anyone else. When she arrived at the company, the young girls at the front desk were gathered together, chattering excitedly as if they had discovered something incredible. She inquired briefly and learned that Leo Graham had also come, as his company was a partner of Hunt Corporation and he was a good friend of Ethan's. Unlike Ethan's cold and arrogant demeanor, Leo was approachable and handsome. No wonder the young girls were so excited. Seeing Eleanor, everyone swarmed around her. "Miss Vance, after you win the award today, are you going to treat us all to a meal?" Yes, congratulations in advance, Miss Vance," Eleanor smiled lightly. "Mr. Hunt hasn't announced it yet. If I really do win, I'll definitely treat everyone." The girls grew even happier. "Is there even a question? In the executive office, Miss Vance is the most senior and the hardest working. Not just in the company, but compared to everyone in the entire group, this award has to be yours." Exactly, if they gave the award to someone else, it would be totally rigged. She quickly made a gesture to quiet the outspoken girls. The awards ceremony began. She stood to the side, her eyes accidentally meeting Leo's. She gave a slight nod as a greeting. Leo looked at her, a faint, unreadable smile on his lips. The ceremony was nearing its end, finally reaching the most anticipated award, Employee of the Year. Everyone looked at Eleanor with smiling eyes. Some who were close to her even had their hands raised, ready to applaud wildly the moment they heard her name. Ethan Hunt stood tall and regal on the stage, exuding a powerful, kingly aura. His deep eyes swept over Alina for a second. The next moment, his thin lips slowly uttered Daisy Reed's name. Chapter 7, the room fell silent. In that instant, surprised and sympathetic gazes all turned in unison to Alina, who had been ready to accept the award. Beside her, Daisy was ecstatic. She hugged Alina, jumping with joy. "Miss Vance, I won. I thought this award would be yours. I've only been at the company for less than 3 months on stage." Ethan's eyes were gentle, his tone incredibly doting. "Daisy Reed, why haven't you come up to receive your award?" She watched Daisy bounce onto the stage, take the trophy from Ethan's hands, stand beside him, and excitedly cradle the trophy for a photo with him. And Alina, in a corner below the stage, blinked back the mist in her eyes and, in the silence, was the first to start clapping. After the ceremony, everyone attended a banquet. Daisy, despite her low rank, was given the exceptional privilege of sitting next to Ethan. The usually noble and reserved Ethan was now unreservedly peeling shrimp and placing them in her bowl. Alina's hand trembled involuntarily. Her knife and fork crossed, and the sharp blade sliced her finger. Blood instantly stained the white tablecloth. She grabbed a napkin to wrap her wound and quickly stood up. Behind her, Ethan's gaze never once left Daisy. When she stepped outside, the napkin wrapped around her finger was soaked through with blood. As she looked down, Leo Graham had followed her out. "Get in the car." She was a bit stunned, standing motionless. Leo directly opened the car door and pushed her in. "The cut looks a bit deep. If you don't get it treated at a hospital, it'll leave a scar." Alina smiled bitterly. He wasn't sitting close to her, yet he had noticed her injured hand immediately. Ethan, who was right across from her, had completely ignored her. Was it that Leo was exceptionally observant, or that Ethan was just that unconcerned about her? After her wound was bandaged, Leo offered to drive her home, and she didn't refuse. Although Leo hadn't been in the country for years, given his friendship with Ethan, he was clearly aware of her relationship with him. Refusing would only make her seem coy. On the way, Leo looked at her with a half smile. "I still owe you one. You look like you're troubled by love. Need my help?" She looked out the window and couldn't help but laugh. "How would you help me?" Leo held the steering wheel with one hand, his handsome face looking slightly roguish. "A little girl like Daisy probably couldn't resist a man like me. If you need me to, I don't mind sacrificing my good looks. Besides, my old man is nagging me to find a girlfriend anyway." Alina forced a bitter smile and waved her hand. "Forget it, you can't force matters of the heart." Hearing this, Leo glanced at her, his tone half serious, half joking. "Fine. Besides, compared to Daisy, I'm more interested in you." Alina was stunned. She looked up and saw that his eyes didn't seem to be joking. Flustered by his words, she hurriedly thanked him after getting out of the car and walked in without looking back. A man like Leo must have countless women around him. Why would he suddenly pay attention to her? It was just a chance encounter. How could she take that promise seriously? Chapter 8. In the days that followed, Leo always seemed to coincidentally appear by her side. Most of the time, Alina kept a detached distance from him. Leo knew she was being deliberate, but he never pressed the issue. When she was downing drink after drink to close a deal, he would quietly take the glass from her hand, smile, and drink it for her. After the dinner party ended, the first thing he asked was whether the cut on her hand had healed. Alina's heart trembled. She thought about how she and Ethan had spent every day together recently, yet he hadn't noticed her injured finger at all. He had even assigned her to move all the meeting files from the records room for Daisy. Alina's heart felt as if it had turned to stone. Every time he hurt her, a piece of her heart would break, and the love would turn to ash, gradually dissipating in the wind. She no longer knew if what she felt for him was love, or simply years of obsession and sacrifice that made her unwilling to let go so easily. 9 years. She had waited for 9 years and had no more time to waste. The night of Alina's 30th birthday was the last chance she gave him. She meticulously prepared a table full of dishes and even personally baked a cake. After these preparations, she took out the glass jar from the drawer, which was now filled with paper stars. At the office that morning, she had reminded Ethan that it was her birthday tonight. He had paused for a moment but still promised to come home to celebrate with her. But the clock was already pointing to midnight, and there was still no sign of him. The dishes on the table had gone cold. Eleanor had reheated them over and over until they looked limp and unappetizing in their plates. She finally picked up her phone and dialed Ethan's number. The call connected, but the person who answered was Daisy. "Miss Vance, the power went out at my place. Mr. Hunt was worried I'd be scared of the dark, so he's here with me now. Is there anything you need? I can pass it on to him." Eleanor's heart turned cold inch by inch. Her slender fingers used all their strength to hold the phone, preventing it from slipping from her grasp. She was silent for a long time, unable to utter a single word. In the end, she calmly hung up. 9 years of being together, 9 years of companionship, 9 years of devotion, all of it was no match for Daisy's simple fear of the dark. She felt utterly ridiculous, and she felt that the love of these 9 years was even more absurd and cheap. She had hit the wall, and it was time to turn back. It had taken her 9 years to love him, but only a single moment to give up on that love. Eleanor dumped the dishes on the table into the trash can, one by one. Then she opened the glass jar full of stars and flushed them all down the drain. After doing all this, she took out her phone and dialed Leo's number. "Leo, you said before that you owed me one and that you'd do anything I asked. Does that offer still stand?" Leo on the other end seemed to have just fallen asleep, his voice still a bit drowsy. Upon hearing Eleanor's voice, his hoarse tone instantly cleared. "Of course. What do you want?" Eleanor sat in the empty living room, watching the bright moonlight cast shadows on the wall. The clock struck 12. She smiled softly. "I'm 30 today. I want to get married." Chapter 9. The next morning, Ethan, as if he had completely forgotten about missing her birthday last night, told her with a normal expression to pack her things and accompany him on a business trip abroad for a few weeks. Eleanor looked at him quietly for a few moments, then took out the resignation letter she had already prepared and placed it calmly in front of him. "I'm sorry, Mr. Hunt. I'm resigning. As for the business trip, please arrange for someone else to go with you." Ethan looked at her resignation letter and frowned, displeased. He thought she was throwing a tantrum over her birthday and tried to placate her with a little patience. "Stop fooling around. I'll make up for the birthday later." Eleanor shook her head, her tone more serious than ever. "I'm not fooling around. I've been considering my resignation for a long time." Hearing this, Ethan stopped what he was doing and looked at her, his expression serious and cold. "Eleanor, you have to understand, you're not young anymore." Eleanor was almost stunned. That's right. She had been with him since she was 21. She had given him her best years and her youth. Now she was indeed no longer young. So did he think she had nowhere else to go, that she could never leave him? But back then, he was the one who promised to marry her. That was why she had stayed by his side so devotedly for 9 long years. Had he forgotten all that? Ethan glanced at the time. The plane was about to take off, and he didn't have any more time to waste on Eleanor. After a moment of silence, his expression softened slightly, and his voice became gentler. "If you're just tired lately, then take some time off. The company will give you a long vacation. We'll talk about everything when I get back. I'll bring you a gift." With that, he walked straight out of the office and said to Daisy outside the door, "Get ready. You're coming with me to the airport." Daisy was a bit flustered. Since joining the company, she had never worked alone. "Mr. Hunt, I'm afraid I won't do a good job." Ethan was in a rare good mood. "What are you afraid of when I'm here?" She blushed slightly, gathered her things, and hurried after him. Watching his retreating back, Eleanor's lips curled slightly. Wait. Again, it was wait. Once, because of his words, she had waited 9 years. Now, she wasn't willing to wait another second. In this life, the thing she hated most was waiting. Eleanor took off her work badge, placed it on her desk, and took one last look at the place where she had spent 9 years. In Ethan's mind, she was always the second choice, the backup plan, so even if she left him, he probably wouldn't care. Fortunately, she didn't care anymore either. She came out carrying a large box, and then she threw it next to the trash can downstairs, like completely throwing away those 9 years of her youth. Afterward, she got in a car and headed to the coffee shop where she was meeting Leo. Leo had arrived long ago. He was sitting by the window, looking exceptionally handsome as he waited for her. Seeing her appear, a dark glint flashed in his black eyes. "Have you made up your mind?" Eleanor nodded. "I've thought it through very clearly. In fact, I should be the one asking you, are you really willing to marry me? You and Ethan have been friends for years. If he finds out you're with me, I'm afraid." Leo smiled and finished her sentence. He'd probably want to kill me. He then added, you were with him for so many years. Are you really sure you want to give up? Eleanor held her coffee cup, her eyes indifferent as she uttered 4 words. Cutting my losses. She then looked up and smiled lightly. To persist in something you know is impossible is sometimes not determination, but foolishness. I've been a fool for 9 years. It's time to be smart for once. Leo, if you're willing, from now on, I'll only have eyes for you. Leo looked at her quietly. After a long moment, he reached out and held her hand tightly in his. They looked at each other and smiled, saying in unison, here's to the rest of our lives. Chapter 10, a month later, Ethan finally returned from his business trip. On the plane back to a city, Ethan looked at the white clouds outside the cabin window, his mind in turmoil. During his time abroad, without Eleanor, Daisy had made a complete mess of things. Back in the country, although she frequently made mistakes, she had Eleanor to cover for her, and things always managed to be resolved satisfactorily in the end. But without Eleanor, she was like an unweaned baby, completely unable to handle the responsibilities of a secretary. Worse yet, when he was leaving the Louvre, he got into a car accident, and all Daisy could do was cry, unable to solve anything. As he was getting his wounds bandaged at the hospital, while simultaneously replying to emails on his laptop, Ethan couldn't remember how many times he had thought of Eleanor. If she had been by his side, things would not have been like this. She was always the calmest, the most capable. She was the kind of person who could drink until her stomach bled 1 second and then, the next, down the wine in his glass without a change in expression. After finishing his work, he looked at the night view by the Seine, but his mind was filled with images of Eleanor. He remembered that he had once promised to watch the Eiffel Tower with her, to walk along the banks of the Seine. Daisy was cheerful and excited beside him, but he couldn't bring himself to smile. He hastily finished the work at hand and booked a flight back to the country that very night. As the plane landed, Ethan, carrying a gift, was in a hurry to get back. Just as he got in the car, he received a call from Leo. He said he was getting married in a few days and wanted to introduce his future wife to his friends beforehand. Ethan was a bit surprised. He had known Leo for many years and had never heard of him having a girlfriend. How could he just announce that he was getting married? He frowned. Some other day, I need to go back and see Eleanor first. She was throwing a tantrum before my trip. I need to soothe her. Leo on the other end of the line paused, then said with a somewhat ambiguous tone, Eleanor will be there too. Ethan didn't think much of it, hung up, and told the driver to turn around and head to the address Leo had given. By the time he arrived, most of their friends from their circle were already there. They greeted Ethan and then started discussing his hasty and sudden marriage. I can't believe it, Leo's really settling down this time in less than a month. He's got the wedding all planned, can't wait to marry her. Yeah, even though it's rushed, the house, the car, the diamond ring, he picked them all himself. Everything is top-notch, not a single detail overlooked. I wonder what kind of woman could make the great playboy Leo settle down so quickly. Ethan smirked. He had never been interested in such gossip, just listening to it for amusement. But Leo had said Eleanor would be here. Why hadn't he seen her yet after all this time? His cold gaze searched the crowd. Suddenly, someone said that Leo had arrived with his fiancée. Everyone's eyes turned towards the entrance in unison. Ethan followed their gaze, and the next second, his eyes froze on the smiling face of a woman in a white dress. Leo wrapped his arm around the slender waist of the person beside him and smiled as he greeted everyone. Let me introduce you all. This is my fiancée, Eleanor Vance. Chapter 11, a loud buzzing sound erupted in Ethan's head. The wine glass in his hand instantly shattered. Blood trickled from the glass shards embedded in his palm. The attention of everyone present was drawn to him, including Eleanor. Her pupils contracted, and she instinctively took a step forward, wanting to treat Ethan's wound, but the arm around her waist tightened subtly. Leo whispered, Eleanor, you're my fiancée now, not Ethan Hunt's assistant. Eleanor was jolted back to her senses. The tip of her shoe that had peeked out from under her long dress retreated, and she continued to stand quietly by Leo's side. Their height difference was perfect. They were of similar age and both had exquisite features. They looked like a match made in heaven. Ethan pushed away the attendant who wanted to bandage his hand, his eyes, filled with suppressed anger, fixed on Eleanor, stung by the scene. Eleanor Vance, I'm injured, he said faintly, but anyone could hear the coldness in his voice. Come over and bandage it for me. Ethan, as far as I know, Eleanor resigned several days ago. With a beauty in his arms, Leo was fearless, appearing all the more composed. Are you all blind? Mr. Hunt is injured. Hurry up and help him to a rest area. The surrounding attendants were terrified, afraid of being drawn into this invisible battle. But Ethan remained silent, stubbornly waiting for Eleanor's response. The blood from his palm had been dripping onto the carpet for a while, creating a large, dark red stain. His lips were deathly white. Eleanor's heart ached. Did she not know that Ethan was just acting out of a sense of possession, believing she should always be at his beck and call, his most loyal dog? But she wasn't willing anymore. Even if Ethan bled to death right here, it had nothing to do with her. The atmosphere was tense. Everyone held their breath. It was their mutual friend who finally stepped in to break the tension. Ethan, even if you're in good shape, you don't need to waste your blood here. You can donate it at a blood bank another day. Hey, your phone is ringing. It was a call from Daisy. It wasn't that Eleanor had good eyesight, but that Ethan had set a special ringtone for Daisy. One listen was all it took to know it was the simple, lively girl calling. She thought Ethan would answer, but he hung up directly, his gaze returning to Eleanor. Eleanor Vance, I'm giving you one last chance. Are you coming over or not? There's a limit to throwing tantrums. Eleanor smiled bitterly. Even at this point, he couldn't say a single soft word, further proving that his gentleness and thoughtfulness were reserved exclusively for Daisy. Leo saw her evasiveness and smiled. Today is just for me to introduce Eleanor to everyone. It's not that important. Ethan, if you have something to do, you can leave first. Remember to give us a big red envelope. Ethan was too angry to speak. He could only point a finger at Leo in warning before walking away, clutching a white cloth. Once he left, the atmosphere returned to its lively state. The friend who had just saved the day walked over with a wine glass, looked Eleanor over carefully, and then said, I thought you looked familiar. Did you used to accompany Ethan to dinners? I used to be Ethan's assistant. Eleanor's attitude towards others was very gentle. After all her years in the business world, she could tell whether someone was friendly or not. Hello, Mr. Lowe? Oh, you remember me. The man named Lowe was clearly surprised, smiling at Leo. It was 4 or 5 years ago that we had dinner at the same table. Leo, you've married a remarkable woman. Get lost. Leo was very familiar with him and knew the dinner he was referring to was the one for the business partnership between the Lowe and Hunt families. He scolded jokingly, This is my wife, not my assistant. What do I need her to be remarkable for? Eleanor's heart stirred. His words were like warm water, soaking her tired and cold heart, gently soothing the pain of being publicly humiliated by Ethan just now. Everyone around was sharp. Knowing that Eleanor was cherished by Leo, they all came over to toast, and for a while the atmosphere was quite pleasant. Chapter 12. Although the rest of the evening went without a hitch, after a full day of socializing, Eleanor inevitably felt exhausted. It was only due to years of professional discipline that she allowed her back to relax slightly once she was in the car, sinking into the soft seat, lost in thought. The image of Ethan's hand, cut by the glass, kept flashing in her mind. The vivid red pricked at her eyes, making them feel slightly swollen. Soon, Leo, having said his goodbyes to his friends, also got into the car. The driver dutifully lowered the partition between the front and back seats, creating a private, somewhat intimate space for them. Usually, this situation would mean a lingering kiss was to follow. Eleanor was 30. She knew that the pure, innocent love of fairy tales was no longer for her, so she was open-minded about these things. But as Leo leaned in, she still couldn't help but close her eyes, instinctively wanting to pull away. His hot breath tickled her ear. Leo kissed her on the cheek and laughed. What are you thinking? The man said. If you don't like it, you should say no. I won't force you, Eleanor. Her name, spoken by Leo, sounded intimate and tender, very gentle. Eleanor felt her face heat up. She opened her eyes to see Leo close by. He spoke in a low voice, his breath still carrying the sweet scent of gin. May I kiss you now? It was very gentlemanly and also very embarrassing. Eleanor hesitated before nodding. The next second, the man's lips gently touched hers. He smiled like a cat that had caught a fish, then knelt down and took off her high heels. Are you tired? Leo touched the reddened spot on her ankle. We won't wear these next time. I'll take you to buy new ones. Or would you prefer to wear flats? High heels are still necessary for public occasions, Eleanor said, a little embarrassed. She pulled her feet back, hiding them under the long, petal-like skirt, which Leo had also bought for her. Don't spend so much. I still have money. She had resigned through the proper channels and had soon received her last paycheck. For now, she could be considered well off. But sitting around and doing nothing was not in Eleanor's nature. She planned to start looking for a new job after getting married. Back then, Eleanor had won the role of Ethan's secretary because of her own impressive skills. As a graduate of a top 10 university in the country, she was a sought-after talent anywhere, especially given her work ethic. It was just that her work experience over the past 9 years was not exactly glorious. Because of that never-publicized relationship, Eleanor had been forced to perform duties that went far beyond those of a secretary. Her talents and abilities had been restricted. Leo pulled out a pair of comfortable slippers from under the seat and put them on for Eleanor. Hearing her words, he smiled and said, "It's fine not to wear heels. There are so many young people now, why stick to those old-fashioned workplace rules?" Besides, he kissed her on the knee and smiled. "You're now the young mistress of the Graham Group. Who would dare give you a hard time?" Chapter 13. Eleanor was amused by him, but she soon realized a serious problem. While she wasn't a destitute young woman, her money was certainly nothing compared to the Graham family's fortune. After a moment's hesitation, she said, "Leo, do you want to find a lawyer to discuss our assets?" Leo said nonchalantly. "The most important thing right now should be Eleanor. I'm already your fiancé. Shouldn't you change how you address me?" Eleanor was taken aback. "What should I call you?" "Honey, darling," Leo counted on his fingers very seriously. "If you don't like those, you can call me husband like in the old days." "What was all this nonsense?" Eleanor said, embarrassed. "Do I have to call you that? Aren't we getting fake married?" But Leo insisted with a nod. She had to consider it seriously and finally said with a slightly troubled expression, "Can I call you Leo?" "Okay, we'll go with that from now on," Leo nodded with satisfaction. "My parents call me that too. But after we get married, we'll be lovers and family, so it's very intimate." Everything with Leo felt new to Eleanor. She had been in a 9-year loveless relationship with Ethan, and apart from their physical intimacy, she rarely felt loved. But Leo was different. He enthusiastically faced all the initial problems of their relationship, even having the driver take a detour to a nearby mall. "Let's not wait. Let's go pick out shoes and some daily necessities today." He was a man of action. Eleanor, still in her slippers, was dragged out of the car by Leo. She was still wearing the long gown from the party, but luckily, her slender, tall, and well-proportioned figure didn't make her look top-heavy. Instead, she had a casual, lazy beauty. And Leo, holding her hand, looked like a groom who had just stolen his bride. Eleanor was amused by her own imagination. Leo tilted his head and studied her for a moment, then suddenly said, "Eleanor, you should smile more." His comment made Eleanor self-conscious. She pressed her lips together to hide her smile, but Leo's eyes remained fixed on her, as if he had seen something amazing. Before Eleanor could feel uneasy, Leo reached out and poked the corner of her lips. "You have 2 dimples. They're so beautiful." A nearby sales associate was covering her mouth and giggling. "Sir, you and your wife have such a good relationship." Leo quickly turned his head and accepted the compliment without any shame, saying generously, "Yes, we're in our honeymoon phase." Even the mature and steady Eleanor couldn't help but pinch his palm. The prices in this store were not low, but Leo casually looked around, picking out a large selection of items as if he were calling out troops. Eleanor couldn't help but frown and whisper, "They're too expensive." Leo leaned in as if sharing a secret, also lowering his voice. "A cousin of mine told me that the high heels from this store are very well designed and won't tire your feet. A little more expensive is fine." What kind of ordinary family could Leo's cousin be from? Eleanor tried on each pair and was surprised to find that every single one fit her perfectly. Leo obviously thought so too, and he was extremely satisfied with his own taste, having the staff wrap up a large pile of them as if he were stocking up. For a luxury store, this sale would definitely bring a hefty commission. Eleanor thought so because as she was leaving, she noticed the staff were even more enthusiastic than before, bowing and smiling. Wishing you 100 years of happiness and eternal love. Leo kept nodding and saying thank you. They still needed to go downstairs to buy daily necessities, but it was inconvenient to be dressed like this. Leo found a casual brand nearby that offered washing and drying services and went with Alina to pick out simple clothes. As soon as they entered the store, Alina heard a crisp voice. Chapter 14, Daisy Reed was trying on a pair of leather shoes. Her feet were so small that she could almost only choose from the children's section of the store, which brought a pitiful expression to her small face. Ethan Hunt said helplessly, "Why did you have to come here to buy shoes? This doesn't really suit you." Indeed, she was young and had a naive face. The style of this store was relatively mature, and it was hard for Daisy to pull it off. She pouted and huffed, "Well, it's your fault for saying I'm childish. Besides, my salary plus the bonus can only afford this brand." Ethan didn't know how to tell her that he hadn't brought her to the gathering earlier for a different reason. Besides, he was glad he hadn't brought Daisy, or the scene would have been even more chaotic. Daisy quickly glanced at his injured arm and said in a low voice, "It's all my fault I wasn't there. Otherwise, I would have taken you to the doctor right away." Leo looked at Alina, whose expression wasn't great, and quietly asked if she wanted to go to another store, but Alina shook her head. "We'll run into them eventually. We can't avoid them every time. Let's go." A sales associate quickly walked over. "Hello, what can I get for you two?" "A set of simple, comfortable clothes. We need them right away," Leo said, handing her his card. "How long does the wash and dry take?" The service in this kind of store was very thorough and fast. The employee smiled, took the card, glanced at their approximate sizes, and quickly picked out 2 sets of clothes for them to look at. Both sides had no objections. They were separated from Daisy and Ethan by layers of clothing racks, only able to faintly hear voices. But seeing the sales associate's happy expression, Daisy guessed that a sale had been made and muttered, "Ah, I'm so envious of rich people, they just walk in and buy things in minutes." Ethan was actually getting a bit tired of being there. He had been thrown off balance by the bombshell news of the day and said faintly, "Just pick what you like, I'll pay." Daisy's eyes widened, and she said seriously, "How could I do that? I'll be done in a minute, just wait for me." She paid reluctantly, took a couple of steps in the somewhat childish leather shoes, and tilted her head, smiling at Ethan. "Do I look good?" She looked so young and pure. Ethan was captivated by her smile and nodded. "You look good." For some reason, he thought of Alina. Alina wouldn't refuse Ethan's offers to pay or his money transfers like Daisy did. She knew that this amount of money was nothing to Ethan, but for herself, it was a significant extra expense. She was much more realistic, much smarter. Just like when she realized she had no chance against Daisy, she rationally withdrew and moved into someone else's arms. This thought annoyed Ethan. The next moment, the sales associate from the other side brought them their dried, soft clothes. She smiled and said, "Sir, ma'am, the fitting rooms are over there. You can go change. We'll take care of washing, drying, and folding your old clothes and have them delivered to your residence." There was no avoiding it, Alina thought. If they ran into them, they ran into them. Just be gracious. But she still felt inexplicably nervous. A large hand took her cold one. Leo whispered, "What are you afraid of him for? He's not a tiger." Alina couldn't help but look at him. From the side, Leo had a high nose bridge and deep-set eyes, but his eyes were long and round. When he was focused, "You're more like a cat," Alina blurted out. "Cat Leo." Such a childish thing to say. Leo was a bit surprised, then chuckled. "Yep, I'm a cat, and I'm going to eat you, little mouse." Ethan's eyes were dark and gloomy. His gaze fell on their intertwined hands. He didn't speak for a long time, having clearly overheard their conversation. Daisy looked at Alina, confused, and exclaimed, "Miss Vance, so you were the one who bought a whole outfit at once. Why did you resign? I still have questions for you. Who is this? Is he your boyfriend? You look so good together. I've been training you for 2 months. Do you still not understand?" Her questions were rapid fire, but Alina wasn't surprised. Daisy was always like this. She answered calmly, "I resigned due to some changes. This is my boyfriend. Thank you." Daisy smiled happily, not noticing the terrible expression on Ethan's face beside her. She whispered to Alina, "I used to think you and Mr. Hunt were a couple. I was so scared I was going to be the other woman." Alina paused, then looked at Ethan and said, "You're mistaken. Mr. Hunt and I have no relationship at all. You can be with him without worry. You two are a good match. Ethan wanted to argue, but on second thought, in these 9 years, he had never given Alina any title. He had really shot himself in the foot this time. He could only swallow the bitterness and say stiffly, "Daisy, let's go." Daisy smiled and waved goodbye to Alina, who waved back. Chapter 15, Leo hadn't said a word the whole time, considerately waiting for Alina to finish chatting with Daisy. Alina thought he would go in to change first and said apologetically, "Why didn't you change first?" "I was waiting for you," Leo said, pulling her towards the dressing room. Alina thought he would ask about Daisy or Ethan, but Leo just said, "Alina, you made a small mistake." Alina was taken aback, thinking back on their conversation but not noticing any problem. "What mistake?" They reached the fitting room. Leo closed the door and gently turned the lock. The lock clicked shut. "You just called me Leo," he said, pulling Alina to sit on the sofa. His styled hair had a slight curve, like 2 pointy cat ears, which tickled the back of Alina's neck. "You promised to call me Leo." Alina thought he was going to say something serious and was instantly relieved. She said helplessly, "I just haven't gotten used to it." Leo looked up, his eyes bright. Alina flinched slightly under his gaze. "From now on, for every time you call me by the wrong name, I'll kiss you once," Leo said seriously. "No matter the occasion." What kind of tyrannical rule was this? Alina wanted to explain, embarrassed, but Leo quickly leaned in. This was their second kiss. Unlike the light touch in the car, which was like handling a fragile object, Leo's tongue moistened her lips. When their lips parted, she felt a slight sting on her lower lip. Leo had bitten her. "This is your punishment." Leo's fingers gently touched the bite mark on her lip, smiling. "Don't get it wrong next time." Alina nodded, embarrassed, her face bright red. Fortunately, Leo didn't tease her anymore while they were changing. The two went straight to the mall on the ground floor. Alina was curious why he didn't just have the butler prepare these things, but she soon found out why. Many of the items sold here came in pairs. Leo didn't even look at the single items, pushing a large shopping cart and picking up many things. After he picked up the third set of couples' mugs, Alina firmly put it back. "One set for the office, one set for home. What about the third set?" "I'll drink while I walk," Leo said defiantly, "or I can put it in the car. But these are open-top mugs." "All right, I'll listen to my wife," Leo suddenly relented, smiling. "We're not even married yet, and you're already saving money for me, Alina." This time, it was Alina's turn to be embarrassed. They went home with bags of all sizes. Actually, it was mostly Leo who carried everything, not letting Alina touch a thing. Alina wanted to say she wasn't that fragile, but Leo seemed to have read her mind and laughed. "But I'm very strong," he said, flexing his arm. "How could I let you carry anything?" Once they got home, there was even less for Alina to do. All the things they bought were arranged in their respective places by the butler's staff. It was Alina's first day here, and she couldn't help but feel a bit awkward, but everyone was very friendly to her. As soon as Leo entered, he went into the study, leaving an uneasy Alina to be observed by the kind gazes of the various servants. Just as she was about to see what Leo was doing, a middle-aged woman sat down next to her, her gaze very loving. "You must be the child Leo was talking about," she said with a warm smile that made Alina less afraid. "Alina, right? I'm his mother." This time, Alina was truly startled. She immediately stood up and said awkwardly, "Hello, Auntie. I didn't know you were home." Coming to visit empty-handed and planning to stay at their house on the first meeting, Alina didn't know which was more out of line. Her embarrassed expression amused Mrs. Graham, who covered her mouth and laughed. "You child, why are you afraid of me? Don't worry, I like you very much." Like Leo, his parents had personalities that were gentler than Alina had ever imagined. Mrs. Graham smiled and asked a few more questions, including the wedding date. "We'll have to wait for Leo to decide." Alina slowly relaxed. "We're not in a hurry." She just wanted to find a way to get away from Ethan as quickly as possible. Perhaps just getting engaged would be enough to dispel his ideas. Chapter 16. Leo, who had gone into the study as soon as he got home, soon came out with a red booklet. He was startled to see his mother sitting next to Alina. "Mom, what are you doing here?" "You rascal," Mrs. Graham said helplessly. "What's that in your hand? The household registration book. You're about to get married, and I haven't even met my daughter-in-law. Does that seem right?" "It's not like you're getting married and haven't met the groom," Leo said cheerfully, stuffing the booklet into Alina's hand. "Alina, You keep this." The household registration book was already open to Leo's page. When Alina saw his date of birth on his ID card, she was taken aback. "You're only 27, she said, stunned. "But didn't you grow up with Ethan? How can you be almost 5 years younger than him?" She had always thought that Leo's appearance and personality made him seem young, but she hadn't expected him to actually be young 3 years younger than her. Mrs. Graham gave her son a reproachful look and said helplessly, "Leo only went to kindergarten for a short time and skipped 2 grades in middle and high school, so he is a bit younger than you. Alina, you'll have to look after him more in the future." Alina, who was already hesitant about this marriage, felt even more embarrassed. She didn't show it on her face, but she planned to sign an agreement with Leo. Marriage was fine, but she absolutely could not take advantage of Leo. The division of premarital assets had to be made clear. As dusk fell, Mrs. Graham reluctantly said a few more words to Alina and told Leo to bring her home for dinner next time, her words filled with satisfaction. As soon as she left, Alina frowned at Leo. "Why didn't you tell me you were only 27? 27 isn't 17, Leo said, sitting next to her and holding her hand. "Alina Vance, you can't go back on your word." "I won't." Alina's mind was in a mess. "Are you free tonight? Please get a lawyer to handle the property issues." At this, Leo's eyes lit up. "I've already taken care of it. Do you want to come to the study and see?" Alina looked at the 2 prenuptial agreements and felt a headache coming on. She didn't know how Leo could manage a large corporation like the Graham Group with such a lack of guile. Her finger tapped on the black and white text of the document. "If we divorce, 45% of the assets go to me. Leo, aren't you afraid I'll run off the day after we get our marriage certificate?" Before she could finish, her lips were warmed by a kiss. Leo squinted at her and smiled like a cat that had stolen the cream. "It's too late to get the certificate today. City Hall is closed," he said, talking nonsense with a straight face. "We can go tomorrow morning." Alina didn't know what to say. The doubt that had been suppressed in her heart surfaced again. Was Leo really willing to do so much for her just because she had helped him that one time? It was too absurd, a reason that simply didn't hold up. Alina didn't believe it. But she also knew that if she asked Leo directly, she wouldn't get a real answer. Chapter 17. It was only when she saw Leo take out the household registration book that Alina remembered that most of her documents were still in the apartment she shared with Ethan. Other things could be bought again, but replacing her passport, ID, and other documents would be too much trouble. Luckily, she knew his work schedule well. Of course, Ethan had more than one residence. He wouldn't stay in this former love nest after their falling out. It had probably been left vacant. Perhaps in a little while, all her clothes would be thrown out, all traces of her life erased, and even the passwords and fingerprints would be updated. It was better to go and pack up now while she still could. With these thoughts, Alina used her fingerprint to open the door. The door made a slight sound, and she breathed a sigh of relief. She really didn't want to see Ethan. Besides, Ethan wasn't the type to generously return her things. Perhaps Alina would get the advice to look in the trash, it'll be faster. But the entryway was quiet, with a pair of black leather shoes placed neatly. It was Ethan's. He was in the room. Alina felt a sense of surprise. She hesitantly changed into slippers and pushed the door open to find Ethan asleep on the bed. She hadn't seen him in a few days. His hand was still wrapped in a bandage, his palms slightly clenched, and a dark bloodstain on the gauze hinted at a worsening wound. He seemed to be sleeping restlessly, his brows tightly furrowed, his breathing a bit rapid. He seemed to be lying on a piece of clothing. Alina had no mind to observe closely. The sound of her own heartbeat was almost deafening as she tiptoed to the bedside cabinet. Her documents were always kept neatly, all in the top drawer. But it was impossible to open the drawer without making a sound. Sure enough, as soon as she opened it a little, Ethan woke up. He subconsciously reached out and wrapped his arm around Alina's waist, his voice thick with sleepiness. Just one more hour of rest. This commanding tone was only for her, not for Daisy. So did Ethan think she was still by his side, or was it just a habit built up over the years? Alina didn't know and didn't want to think about it. She pulled the drawer open completely. This time, Ethan was fully awake. He had a bad temper when he woke up. He instantly let go of her, sat up in bed, and frowned at Alina. "You still know how to come back?" Alina didn't know what to say. This cold, sarcastic tone was the Ethan she knew. She paused, took her documents, and walked towards the door. Ethan looked at the empty drawer and finally understood why Alina had come back. He looked angrily at her retreating back, grabbed the clothes he had been lying on, and threw them on the floor. It was Alina's coat. He hadn't been able to sleep well for days. Every time he woke up from a dream, it was with the image of Alina's tearful eyes. Only here, in this room that held her faint, sweet scent, could he get a full night's sleep. Ethan's mind was in turmoil. He said angrily, "Alina Vance, are you really going to marry Leo?" "Yes," Alina said softly. "Ethan Hunt, you have the right to be with Daisy Reed. Don't I have the right to pursue my own happiness? I hope to receive your wedding invitation soon. I wish you a long and happy life together." Chapter 18, Leo's eagerness made Alina suspect that he was actually the beneficiary of this marriage. The previous prenuptial agreement was so outrageous that Alina had resisted it to the point of saying, "In that case, we don't need to get the certificate, just have the banquet." Only then did Leo back down and adjust the property ratio to a level she could barely accept. In her 30 years of life, this was Alina's first experience of preparing for a wedding. The Graham family was large and influential, so these matters should have been handled by the staff. But Leo always insisted on doing it himself. From the invitations to the banquet, he wanted to handle every aspect of the wedding personally. At first, Alina thought he was just doing it for the novelty of it, being young. But she hadn't expected Leo to be serious. Even when he was busy with work, he would sit at his desk after coming home and seriously look through the contact list to write invitations. How could Alina let him do it all by himself? But usually, Leo wouldn't let her help. Most of the time, they would sit in the study, their chairs side by side, their heads leaning against each other, talking intimately. "This is my good friend, the one who spoke up at the meeting. Do you remember him?" "Yes," Alina replied, smiling. "I met Mr. Lowe a long time ago." As if that wasn't enough, Leo and Alina got closer and closer until he had her sit on his lap. Alina was so embarrassed her face turned red to the tips of her ears. She leaned stiffly against the broad chest of the man behind her, feeling the warm breath on her ear, and said awkwardly, "Leo, let me down." "Now you know not to get it wrong," Leo chuckled, his chest vibrating, making Alina's back feel a little itchy. "What a shame, I wanted to kiss you." "I didn't get it wrong, can I kiss you?" "Alina." It was the first time someone had called her that, his voice low and lingering, as if the two words had rolled off his tongue, imbued with a deep affection. Alina somehow nodded and was pressed against the desk and kissed for a while. She usually had a calm and composed demeanor, but it was rare for her to lean so weakly in his arms. Leo looked at her for a moment, then bit her collarbone in frustration. "I wish I could marry you today." Alina had almost no room to resist. These days, she would have been sad about Ethan, but Leo was in such a hurry to have the wedding that she was too busy to think about it. Trying on dresses, taking photos, booking a venue, inviting guests. Luckily, she was a very capable person, otherwise she would have been overwhelmed. On the day of her appointment at the bridal shop, Alina happened to have some free time. Leo had promised to go with her, but as luck would have it, a small problem came up at the company. The guilt on his handsome face was almost palpable, which made Alina's heart soften. Perhaps it was because Leo was a few years younger than her, but most of the time, Alina felt that he still had a childlike innocence. She rarely took the initiative, but she cupped Leo's face and kissed him, her long fingers smoothing the frown on his brow. "You go first. It's the bride's fitting anyway, it doesn't matter if you're here or not." Leo said glumly, "If this bridal shop wasn't so hard to book, I would have asked them to postpone. I want to be the first one to see my bride." Alina couldn't help but laugh. "Then come quickly. I'll wait for you, okay?" Leo kissed her hard, not letting go until he saw a hint of red on her lips. "Okay, Alina, wait for me." He left in a hurry, so it must have been an urgent matter. Alina sighed and went downstairs. The driver was already waiting at the door. Leo was truly the gentlest and most considerate man she had ever met. In her 9 years with Ethan, she had never enjoyed such meticulous treatment. She smiled and shook her head. Perhaps comparing Leo to Ethan was unfair to Leo in the first place. Chapter 19, the driver drove steadily. Alina noticed that the owner's personality seemed to influence the staff's as well. The entire Graham household, from Leo's parents to himself, down to a driver, exuded a very reliable and reassuring gentleness. Ethan's side was a carbon copy of coldness. As if one wrong move would earn his reprimand, of course, Daisy was an exception. Perhaps this was the fearlessness of the favored. When Alina arrived at the bridal shop, she was a little later than her scheduled time. This wasn't a big deal, but the sales assistant was clearly an inexperienced young girl. She blocked Alina's way with an embarrassed look on her face. "Are you the Miss Vance who made a reservation? There's a gentleman whose appointment conflicts with yours. Could you please wait a moment?" She wasn't working now and had a lot of free time. She was planning to see if Leo could make it anyway, so waiting a bit was not a problem. She nodded at the girl who was on the verge of tears. The sales assistant immediately breathed a sigh of relief, led her to a seat in the waiting area, and gratefully brought her a fruit platter and snacks. Alina knew that high-end brand stores like this required one-on-one service for each customer. When she worked at Hunt Corporation, their own stores had the same policy, which was actually to give customers a value-for-money experience. So when she vaguely saw a figure coming down from the second floor, she wasn't surprised. She just didn't expect Ethan to love Daisy to this extent. Were they already preparing to pick out a wedding dress? As she was stunned, a petite figure bounced down the stairs. It was Daisy. Alina just lowered her eyes and pretended not to see her, but Daisy was clearly someone who couldn't read the atmosphere. She waved happily. "Miss Vance," there was no way to play dumb anymore. Alina helplessly put down her phone, looked up at Daisy, and said, "Long time no see." But she unexpectedly met Ethan's gaze. It was hard to describe his expression, but there was a hint of displeasure. Ethan's brow was furrowed, and just as he was about to speak, Daisy abruptly interrupted. "Miss Vance, are you here to look at wedding dresses too?" Alina smiled and nodded. Ethan's face turned ugly. He sneered, "Alone? It seems your future husband doesn't care much for you." Those 4 words were said through gritted teeth, and even Daisy could sense the sarcastic tone. Her eyes darted between the two of them, then she said to Alina, "Are we in your way? We're almost done looking. Why don't you go try some on, Miss Vance?" Alina thought how awkward that would be and smiled, shaking her head. "I was the one who was late. You guys go ahead. Daisy, did you find a suitable one?" Daisy was a little embarrassed and shy. "Miss Vance, you misunderstood. I'm just here with Mr. Hunt for market research." But her blushing face had already betrayed her thoughts. Ethan, however, showed no signs of joy. He said impatiently, "If I tell you to go try it on, then go. Are you afraid I'm going to eat you?" He couldn't explain the anxious feeling in his heart. The thought of Alina getting married just made him angry. His words were a bit harsh, and Alina, feeling a bit angry herself, stood up and found a sales assistant to pick out a dress. The styles she chose were mostly very simple and elegant. They were beautiful, but more exquisite and noble than magnificent. The sales assistant looked Alina over and couldn't help but say, "Miss Vance, you're so beautiful, you can pull off any style. Would you like to try this one?" Alina followed her finger to the dress on the mannequin and was taken aback by the heavily layered skirt and the intricate, heavy train. "Won't this be very heavy to walk in?" The sales assistant smiled. "Most brides prioritize beauty. Miss Vance, you're really cute." At some point, Ethan had also come over. He looked at the wedding dress thoughtfully and said to Alina, "This one suits you very well." "Yes, Miss Vance," Daisy nodded vigorously. "You should try it on, you'll definitely look beautiful." Chapter 20, Alina simply couldn't understand what madness had possessed Ethan or why he was picking out a wedding dress for her. She answered stiffly, "I don't like this one. I'm not considering it." Ethan saw her resistance, and his face took on a gloomy cast. Daisy was still praising Alina as if she were a fairy descended from heaven, and she kept urging her to try it on. The sales assistant was also pressing her. Under the combined pressure, Alina finally gave in. So it was okay if others said it, but not if he, Ethan Hunt, said it. Even though he had ultimately gotten his way, Ethan still felt a surge of annoyance. Alina went in to try on the wedding dress, and the sales assistant followed her. The back of the skirt had long ribbons that needed to be tied up over the opening, a task impossible for one person to do alone. So only Daisy and Ethan were left outside. "Were you and Miss Vance a couple before?" It turned out the girl wasn't that clueless. She could sense the unusual atmosphere in the air. She had just been deceiving herself. Her voice trembled slightly, but she still asked the question. Ethan pondered for a moment before nodding. Daisy burst into tears. She had just graduated not long ago, young and inexperienced. She had thought she had found her perfect match and was about to have a love story as sweet as a fairy tale, only to suddenly discover that not every prince waits, chaste and pure, for his princess to appear. This time, she wasn't crying in a delicate, coquettish way. She was truly heartbroken. Large tears rolled down her plump, smooth cheeks, punctuated by an occasional soft sob. "I've broken up with her now," Ethan said, a strange heaviness in his heart, like a blunt knife cutting into the raw, red flesh of his palm. "Stop crying, Eleanor will ask." Yes, Eleanor was just that contradictory. She was realistic enough to withdraw decisively when she saw that Ethan couldn't love her, finding a better path for herself. Yet she was also kind enough to show great concern for her former rival. This was what truly made Daisy sad. "Miss Vance helped me so much. How can I face her now?" A truth that someone 10 years his junior understood, Ethan was only now belatedly beginning to grasp. Eleanor had loved him for so many years, and he had turned around to be with another woman. What right did Ethan have to face her? He gave a bitter smile and said no more. The few employees in the store had gathered in front of the fitting room, waiting for the bride-to-be, Eleanor, to emerge. The girl who had been lucky enough to help her with the dress opened the door and even turned on the spotlight in front of it. She walked out slowly. The wide train was adorned with sparkling, star-like diamonds. The outer layer of lace on the lower skirt trailed on the floor. The boning in the bodice cinched her already slender waist, making it look impossibly small. She was so beautiful that for a moment, Ethan held his breath. Eleanor frowned slightly. 2 assistants followed behind her, holding up the heavy train, but she still felt the dress was too cumbersome. Beside her, Daisy had already wiped away her tears and exclaimed in amazement, "Miss Vance, you look absolutely stunning." Eleanor pressed her lips together, her gaze meeting Ethan's, who was staring at her intently. She paused for only a moment before mercilessly looking away, acting as if he didn't exist. In that instant, Ethan felt a pang of jealousy towards Daisy. Because if he were the one to praise her beauty, Eleanor would immediately want to change out of the dress. She had always been such a decisive person. Chapter 20, the bell at the shop door tinkled. Eleanor's gaze fell on the man panting, bent over at the waist, and she froze for a moment before a smile broke out on her face. Her smile was genuine, a shallow dimple appearing on her cheek, astonishingly sweet. One look was all it took to know that the person she was looking at was her beloved. How could Ethan not see it? "Why are you so out of breath?" Eleanor said with a smile. "Where's your car?" Leo looked up and stared at her, dumbfounded. He couldn't speak for a long time until the sales assistant led her by her wedding dress to him. Then he murmured, "Eleanor, you're so beautiful." Eleanor burst out laughing, and the sales assistants around her also covered their mouths and laughed. "There was a traffic jam at the intersection. I couldn't wait, so I ran over," Leo said, holding her hand, his eyes fixed on her. "You look so beautiful in this. You're like the bride I used to dream of as a child. So beautiful." "I know," Eleanor's face flushed from his compliments. She said with a smile, "So this one?" No, Leo shook his head. He took the train from the sales assistant's hand and weighed it. "This train is too big. You'll be very tired at the wedding, and it's not safe. Let's look at some others, okay? Or do you like this one?" His eyes were practically begging, full of reluctance, but he was still thinking of Eleanor. Her heart softened so much it felt like it was melting. She had to say, "If you really like it, a little wait is fine. I'm your bride, after all." The atmosphere was so full of love and sweetness that even the sales assistants couldn't help but laugh and praise them. "You two have such a good relationship." Leo was about to go look at other styles when his gaze swept around and finally landed on Ethan. The smile faded from his face. The once good friends now looked at each other with hostility. "Congratulations," Ethan's voice was cold. "I didn't know the young master of the Graham family was so skilled at poaching." This wasn't even sarcasm, it was a blatant provocation. Leo smiled. "I have to thank Mr. Hunt for his generosity." A single, light-hearted sentence made Ethan clench the report in his hand, his face grim. "It seems the Graham Corporation has too much free time on its hands." Leo knew that Ethan was behind his company's troubles. He sneered and didn't reply, instead helping Eleanor choose a wedding dress. He had long been prepared for Ethan's retaliation. If he was scared off by a little trouble like this, there would have been no point in getting together with Eleanor in the first place. Eleanor was still a little worried. "Are you sure it's okay?" Her brows furrowed slightly. Ethan? He was not a man who would give up easily. But Eleanor really couldn't understand this man. For 9 years, Ethan had ignored her, but now he was actively approaching her and acting as if he was determined to win her back. Was it his possessiveness acting up? Or had he truly seen his own heart? But no matter what, Eleanor felt there was no need for her to pay him any attention. 9 years ago, Eleanor had stood by Ethan's side, full of love, thinking that one day she would win his favor. But that long time had only been like a blunt knife, carving away her feelings piece by piece. It wasn't like love, more like despised, rotting flesh, an unwanted existence. She took a deep breath. It wasn't until Leo took her hand that she was pulled back from that suffocating feeling. She squeezed his hand back, and when their eyes met, she saw the gentle comfort in his. "Don't worry," Leo said seriously. "I'm here." Her eyes welled up and she nodded. How could she not fall in love with Leo? Eleanor didn't know. He was like the midday sun hanging in the winter sky, warm but not blinding. Chapter 22, Ethan still got up and left. He knew he had no right to stay here. Eleanor was getting married, but the groom wouldn't be him. He was just an invited guest. The threats he had thrown at Leo were like the spines a hedgehog raises when cornered. Even if he succeeded in bringing down the Graham family, so what? Thousands of companies could be established, but Eleanor? There was only one Eleanor in this world. Beside him, Daisy was also silent. The car was so quiet you could only hear their breathing. She watched the red light turn off and the green light turn on in the distance, and murmured in a daze, "Ethan, Eleanor loved you for 9 years." She had only just found out. Ethan didn't speak. He looked at her face in the rearview mirror, young, soft, with plump cheeks that made her look like a college student who hadn't yet entered society. Eleanor had been like that back then. But she was smart, brave, and decisive. It wasn't until he met the clumsy Daisy that Ethan realized that such resilience and persistence were not the norm. Most people were probably like Daisy. "In 9 years, will I become like this? Will you throw me away like a useless thing, just like you did with her? No, maybe I won't even be able to stay that long." She muttered to herself, her voice growing quieter, and the car returned to silence. Eleanor finally chose a mermaid-style wedding dress that accentuated her tall and elegant figure. She was already very beautiful, and unlike Daisy's youthful innocence, time had left its mark on her face, but it only made her look more intellectual and gentle. Leo stared at his bride for a long time, his eyes actually turning red. "What are you crying for?" Eleanor said, half laughing, half crying as she touched his eyes. His tall body pulled her into an embrace, a feeling of unprecedented security. "Thank you, Heaven, for giving me an Eleanor," Leo mumbled. "I need to find a chance to give thanks." Eleanor was taken aback, but Leo looked like he wasn't going to talk about it, so she didn't press him further. They had plenty of time to slowly tell each other their secrets. There was no need to rush. When drawing up the guest list, Eleanor found that she had no one to invite, which left her in a daze for a long time. For so many years, she had been like a satellite orbiting only around Ethan, without even having time to make friends. Leo saw her distraction, and a trace of heartache flashed in his eyes. He coaxed her in a low voice, "My friends are your friends, Eleanor. From now on, you'll only get happier." Eleanor looked up at him and smiled softly. She had stubbornly left home years ago and had long since lost contact with her parents. To establish herself by Ethan's side, Eleanor had gritted her teeth and abandoned even her hometown. Her parents, who favored sons over daughters, wouldn't care if this daughter lived or died. Eleanor had no intention of inviting them. But soon, she received a phone call. "Miss Vance," the girl on the other end of the line had a bright and innocent laugh. "I've resigned." Eleanor was taken aback. "Are you free to have a meal with me?" Eleanor didn't dislike Daisy. Her work skills were indeed a bit weak, but she was a very kind girl. Although she wasn't interested in getting involved with her ex's current girlfriend, she could hear the underlying unease in Daisy's tone. "I should probably go," she sighed. She told Leo about it, and he waved his hand. "I'll come pick you up then." The restaurant they met at was an affordable one. Eleanor hadn't expected to see Daisy like this. Her usually well-groomed hair was a bit messy, and her eyes were red and swollen. But she still managed a smile when she saw her. Daisy, what happened? Such a simple question, yet it made Daisy break down and cry. Chapter 23, not long after running into a leaner at the bridal shop, Daisy had gone to her colleagues to seriously inquire about the story of her now resigned senior. She learned that a leaner had loved Ethan for 9 years. The simple number couldn't convey the depth of that affection. Only with the embellished additions from her colleagues did Daisy realize that she could be considered a latecomer who had interfered. She cried with a sense of grievance, her words muffled and unclear, yet she insisted on apologizing to a leaner. The latter sighed helplessly, wiped her tears, and then smiled. "Good thing we're in a private room," a leaner said. "Otherwise, people would think I'm bullying you." Her attitude was still gentle, which made Daisy feel forgiven. She sniffled a few times and slowly calmed down. A leaner said thoughtfully, "So you resigned because of this. You feel sorry for me?" "Yes, but not just that," Daisy said, her eyes red like a rabbit's. I really like Mr. Hunt." After leaving the company, her form of address had become more formal. She clutched her cup nervously. "Miss Vance, it's the first time I've ever fallen for someone. I thought this was all there was. But after learning about you, I can't be sure if Ethan will eventually leave me, just like he broke up with you." Eleanor couldn't help but laugh. "You've already found out so much from others. Haven't you also heard that Ethan treats you specially? He was never this good to me." "But," Daisy lowered her head, "but I feel bad for you, Miss Vance. How could he do that?" No wonder Ethan liked her, Eleanor thought. Who could bear to be harsh with such a simple, kind, and foolish girl? Under Leo's doting, she understood more and more that what Ethan had given her was not love at all, so she was exceptionally calm. "Daisy, have you forgotten? I'm about to get married." Daisy was surprised. "Is it the person from last time? Who else could it be?" Eleanor was amused by her. "I'm very happy now." "Then you must invite me," Daisy said seriously. "If you're short on bridesmaids, I can be one too." Eleanor smiled and said okay. This trip wasn't in vain after all. At least one of her invitations could be sent out. Daisy actually wanted to ask her if she didn't feel any regret, but seeing the man waiting for Eleanor by the car with a small bouquet of flowers, she kept her mouth shut. She was still very confused, but at least Eleanor's life was better now than before. Knowing this, the strong sense of guilt in her heart dissipated a lot. Word got around, and colleagues from the company who she was still in contact with all knew that Eleanor was getting married. For a time, many people volunteered to be her bridesmaids. She knew this was Daisy's doing, and her mood lightened. It really felt good to have friends. Ethan was the last to know about Eleanor's wedding date. Chapter 24, he only overheard it while passing the break room, listening to his subordinates murmuring. The woman's phone number on his phone had been silent for a month or two, and it had been a month or two since Eleanor had left him. It was like a blind man losing his cane, a deaf person losing their hearing aid. At times like these, whenever Ethan thought of the tall, elegant figure who had stood in front of him, taking drinks for him, he could feel a dull, belated pain in his heart. How could he have naively thought that the one who would have a hard life after they separated was Eleanor? Worn out from dealing with the pressure from the shareholders, Ethan had to withdraw his plans to target the Graham family. It wasn't his style to go head-to-head and come out bleeding, but if conditions allowed, he really wanted to. Leo had disregarded their brotherhood and snatched Eleanor from his side. Why couldn't he retaliate? But had Eleanor ever truly belonged to him? The weather turned cold, and the wedding preparations were in full swing. Perhaps from overwork, Mrs. Graham fell ill. Eleanor wasn't very good at cooking, but because of Ethan's chronic stomach problems, she was quite skilled at making therapeutic soups. She dug out a clay pot that hadn't been used in years, found suitable ingredients in the fridge, and stewed a large pot of soup. Not long after Leo got off work, he smelled the aroma from the kitchen and followed it, sticking to Eleanor's back like glue. He was tall and strong, so he inevitably got in the way, always stepping on something. Eleanor was exasperated. "Get out, you're in the way." "You're already tired of me before we're even married," Leo said, nuzzling her nose and stealing a kiss. "Is this for my mom?" "Yes, and there's some for you." His face immediately lit up with joy, and he happily brought over his own bowl and chopsticks, waiting to be fed by Eleanor. She methodically portioned out the soup for Mrs. Graham, and then ladled out the rest to cool. After Eleanor skillfully finished these tasks, Leo suddenly hugged her, burying his face in her neck and whispering, "Why are you so capable?" Eleanor was about to reply, "Isn't being capable a good thing?" But then she heard Leo say, "It makes my heart ache." For the first time, someone felt sorry for her after seeing her abilities. In the past, Eleanor had only been asked to be faster and faster. She had run with all her might, never having a chance to stop, until she ran headfirst into an embrace as warm and soft as a pile of the world's softest clouds. She was caught by Leo. The soup on the side had gone from scalding to warm. She was gently held and kissed for a long time until Leo straightened up, dissatisfied. "I wish we could get married sooner, this time," Eleanor understood. She pursed her lips and smiled shyly, as if she were back in her first love as a teenager. Chapter 25. Leo was truly busy. Fortunately, Mrs. Graham was just feeling a little under the weather. When Eleanor brought the soup to the hospital, she was energetically directing a nurse on how to give her an IV. "Don't be afraid, little girl, if you miss, you miss. It's normal for someone my age to have hard-to-find veins. Try again." The intern nurse looked at her with grateful tears in her eyes and, with her gentle and rambling encouragement, finally managed to insert the needle. She let out a sigh of relief and a genuine smile. Eleanor stood outside the door, her heart warming at the sight. "Auntie, I'm here," she said, entering after the young nurse had left. She sat by the bed and held Mrs. Graham's somewhat cold arm. "Are you feeling unwell anywhere else?" "It's nothing serious," Mrs. Graham said, smiling as she lifted the lid of the soup bowl. She was clearly impressed. "Oh, Eleanor, you make such good soup. Auntie is getting hungry." The Graham family members were all very expressive and never stingy with their praise. Eleanor was dizzy from her compliments, wondering if she was really some great chef. After accompanying Mrs. Graham while she finished her soup, Eleanor prepared to go get the report the nurse had mentioned. She had only taken a few steps when she ran into the person she least wanted to see. Ethan Hunt. She hadn't seen him in just half a month, but he looked much more haggard. His brows were tightly furrowed, and his handsome face was as cold as if it had been frozen. Eleanor wanted to avoid him, but the hallway was narrow. She lowered her head and tried to walk past him. Unsurprisingly, he grabbed her wrist. "Eleanor," Ethan's voice was very hoarse. "Long time no see." Eleanor didn't want to say this to him. Lovers could say it, friends could say it, colleagues could say it, but not Ethan. He had no right, no need, to pretend that nothing had happened and interact with her. It made Eleanor feel a little sick. But Ethan kept talking. His gaze fell on the report, and he couldn't make out the words. A flash of shock crossed his eyes. "You're pregnant?" Eleanor had been well taken care of at the Grahams, and her complexion and health had improved a lot. It was understandable that Ethan would make such a mistake. She decided to go along with it and nodded. In reality, the most intimate contact she had had with Leo was just kissing. But if this could dispel Ethan's pointless entanglement, what did it matter? She and Leo would be husband and wife sooner or later. If they wanted to, they would have a cute baby. After this mental preparation, Eleanor became more confident in her lie. "4 weeks," she said, waving the report in her hand. "I'm here for a checkup." A clear flash of pain crossed Ethan's eyes. He didn't speak for a long time, and when he finally did, his voice was even hoarser. "You really love him." In those 9 years, Eleanor and he had, of course, slept together. Every time afterward, she would take a pill, as if she never expected their child to be born. Eleanor seemed to see through his thoughts, and a trace of bitterness rose in her heart. Chapter 26. How ridiculous. Why would she let a child born without any love come into this world? Besides, during those days, she drank, stayed up late, and ravaged her body until it was in tatters. Ethan's eyes grew dim. He said faintly, "I wish you happiness." "Thank you." She turned to leave without hesitation, but the voice from behind her made her stop. Ethan said, "Did you ever truly love me?" "I did." Her voice was very soft, like a cloud in the sky. "Ethan Hunt, I dare to admit it. What about you?" Eleanor asked the question, but it didn't seem like she wanted an answer. She walked away quickly, and in a blink of an eye, she had left Ethan behind, just as Ethan had unhesitatingly left her behind. "I loved her." Ethan looked at his own medical report and murmured, "And I still love her now." But Eleanor didn't want to hear it anymore. This weekend was a very auspicious day. After repeatedly consulting with fortune tellers, Leo decided to get their marriage license on this day. Eleanor wasn't so superstitious. She believed that any day with good weather was a good day. On the way to get their license, they saw several wedding cars. Leo was even more convinced that this was a good day, and he smiled the whole way. When they first met, Alina had thought he was a mature and successful young man, but after getting to know him for so long, she had long seen the young heart hidden beneath his well-dressed exterior. Like a fledgling young boy. The whole process went unbelievably smoothly. Alina stared at the red booklet for a long time, unable to come back to her senses. Leo's face fell, and he took her hand, worried. "You're not having second thoughts, are you?" Alina was exasperated. "How could I? Don't be ridiculous." It was just that after 30 years of twists and turns, she had finally found her heart's desire. On the way back, Leo was practically humming a song. He would occasionally look at Alina with a loving gaze and smile. "When we get back, can I tell you a secret?" "Of course," Alina said, her eyes curving into a smile. "I have a secret to tell you too. To tell you that I've fallen in love with you a long time ago." The accident happened at that moment. The car accident that came in today was so tragic. The owner and the passenger were a newlywed couple, on their way back from getting their marriage license. A truck driving on the wrong side of the road hit them head-on. It's crazy, who knew it would be so coincidental? It was carrying rebar, and the truck driver braked suddenly. The car was pierced straight through, they couldn't be saved. The car owner is still in emergency surgery, right? Yeah, the passenger's injuries aren't serious. You could say they were lucky. Ethan's hands were trembling. His heart was pounding, and cold sweat beaded on his forehead. It wasn't until he heard that last sentence that he managed to suppress the dizziness. He quickly asked, I'm their family." Chapter 27, "Oh, come quickly over here." "Is Alina okay? Is Leo okay?" "She's pregnant, now she must be." "No, I have to calm down." Ethan had heard about the accident on the radio on his way home. He immediately searched for a video and confirmed that it was Alina and Leo's car. He sped to the hospital. He stumbled to the emergency room door and saw an unusually calm Alina. She was tightly clutching 2 marriage certificates, her face pale, but her eyes were bright. "I'm here." Ethan couldn't think straight at this point. He reached out and took Alina's hand, feeling the stickiness. "Are you okay?" Alina nodded but didn't speak. Her throat was tight and she couldn't make a sound. If she tried to speak, she would start to tremble. She had watched with her own eyes as the rebar pierced through the truck driver's window, then through theirs, with an unstoppable force and into Leo's chest. She couldn't collapse now, so she stood up straight. The 2 marriage certificates in her hand were bright red, stained with her and Leo's blood. She couldn't even cry. The light in the operating room went on. A doctor came out and shouted, "Is anyone here with B-type blood? Is anyone here with B-type blood? The patient is bleeding heavily and needs a transfusion. O-type is also okay, we've requested from the blood bank, but it might not be in time." Ethan stood up abruptly. "I am." Dr. Alina's eyes lit up. She stammered, I'm O-type, you can take from both of us." There was no time for thanks now. Alina gave Ethan a deep look, but a troubled expression appeared on his face. The medical report flashed before his eyes. Ethan's face suddenly darkened. He took 2 steps forward and whispered something to the doctor, who gave a firm, negative answer. No, absolutely not." The doctor shook his head repeatedly. "We'll wait for the blood bank. Family member of the patient, you come with me." In an instant, hope vanished. The strength Alina had mustered up finally broke. She slapped Ethan hard across the face. "If you can't do it, why did you come?" she said, her eyes red with tears, her voice choked. "Did you come to mock me? You were waiting for him to die, weren't you?" The slap made Ethan turn his head to the side. He had no explanation, his mouth opening and closing uselessly. Alina was about to follow the doctor to give blood, but he stopped her. He said in a low voice, "You're pregnant, you can't either, can you?" "I'm not pregnant." Alina looked at him, her eyes clear from her tears. "I just wanted you to give up, Ethan Hunt. Stop pestering me." Chapter 28, during her time with the Graham family, Alina had recuperated well, but when the doctor pulled the needle from her arm, she still couldn't sit steady and swayed. Ethan caught her just in time. When Alina regained her senses, she immediately stood up straight. "You're not needed here." Her lips and cheeks were bloodless, transparently white. "You can go." Ethan's throat tightened. Alina's rejection was obvious, but he couldn't bring himself to leave at a time like this. Leo's parents also arrived soon. They were relatively calm. They saw the medical cotton and tape on Alina's arm, which had already started to seep blood due to her neglect, trickling down her elbow to her wrist. She herself was completely unaware. Mrs. Graham reached out to press on it for her and said with heartache, "Good child, you must have been so scared." Before, she had been able to maintain a composed facade. But now, at the touch of her warm fingers, the taut nerve in Alina finally snapped. She collapsed into Mrs. Graham's arms, clutching the hem of her clothes and sobbing uncontrollably. "It's all my fault. It's all my fault. I shouldn't have found Leo and wanted to marry him." Mr. Graham also took her cold hand. His eyes were heavy, but there was not a single word of blame. "Silly girl, how can this be your fault?" Ethan stood there like an outsider, rooted to the spot. He also wanted to comfort Alina, to have her let down her guard and lean on him, but was he worthy? If Alina was going to blame herself, then in the end, the one who had sinned was him, Ethan Hunt. That must be why he was getting this retribution. He smiled bitterly and turned to leave. Fortunately, the doctor soon informed them that the blood from the blood bank had arrived. B-type wasn't particularly rare, and the whole family breathed a sigh of relief, continuing to wait outside the operating room. It was only then that they noticed Alina also had various scrapes on her palms and arms, but she had already forgotten where she got them and was unwilling to deal with them now. The two exchanged a look and had to let it go. The surgery was very long. Based on Alina's vague memory, the rebar should have pierced through Leo's lung, which could easily cause massive bleeding. She held Mrs. Graham's hand tightly, who held hers back, giving each other some support. The red light of the operating room went out, and the green light came on. A nurse pushed the hospital bed out, but her face was not relaxed. The doctor said seriously, "The patient still needs to be observed for 24 hours, but his vital signs are currently stable." Alina looked at Leo lying on the white sheets, his eyes tightly closed, and tears streamed down her face. Chapter 29. She had never seen Leo so weak. His face was pale, his hair disheveled, making him look even younger than his actual age, more fragile. The Graham couple appeared more composed. Alina took a deep breath and pulled herself together to follow the nurse. They watched as Leo was wheeled into the intensive care unit and could go no further. The nurse comforted them. "The patient is so young. As long as he makes it through the surgery, he'll be fine. The family should take care of their own health." Alina nodded repeatedly. Looking at Leo on a ventilator through the glass, her hands were still trembling. Mrs. Graham was clearly much more haggard. She comforted her. "Leo is very lucky, he'll be fine. But you, Alina, go get your wounds treated now. Don't let them get infected." Alina couldn't describe the agony of those 24 hours. After getting her wounds treated, she sat numbly in the hospital. Mr. and Mrs. Graham, being older, had to go home to rest. It wasn't until the nurse wheeled the person out of the intensive care unit that Alina let out a sharp sigh of relief. She felt a wave of dizziness as she stood up. "He's being moved to a regular ward," the nurse said with a smile. "Now we just wait for him to wake up. Have you eaten anything? Your face is so pale." She pressed a piece of candy into Alina's palm. Alina smiled gratefully and followed the nurse to the regular ward. She first sent the good news to Mr. and Mrs. Graham. She guessed the two were probably catching up on sleep at home, so she didn't call them. After doing all this, she belatedly felt a pang of hunger. As the nurse had said, Alina hadn't eaten all day. Just as she was about to order some takeout, someone had already delivered a meal to her door. "Miss Vance, please enjoy. It's all light and healthy food," the person said, bowing politely. He laid out all the dishes from the meal box and then left with the cart. "Please let me know if you need anything." Alina didn't have much energy to guess who had arranged the meal. She just ate a little to fill her stomach. Ever since she knew he would be all right, the nerve that had been stretched taut finally relaxed. She closed her eyes and fell asleep, her head resting on the edge of the bed, holding Leo's hand. For a while, only the sound of their shallow breathing filled the room. Ethan stood at the door for a long time, only daring to enter after making sure Alina was asleep. She must have been really tired. She was sleeping soundly, but her dreams were clearly not pleasant. Her brows were slightly furrowed in a troubled expression. Ethan stood beside her, quietly looking at the face he should have been tired of long ago, but it was as if he could never get enough. He reached out and gently brushed a strand of hair from her forehead, his finger touching the slight wrinkle to smooth it out. "I thought you wouldn't come." Leo's voice was a bit hoarse, but he could still speak. Chapter 30. Ethan handed him a glass of water and smiled faintly. You've got a tough life. Yeah, Leo also smiled, his gaze falling on the sleeping Alina, full of gentleness. How could I die now, having just married my wife? I'd be at a huge loss. They used to be good friends, but now they were in this situation, yet no one regretted it. Ethan simply sat down. The movement was a bit abrupt, and he seemed to have strained something, letting out a muffled groan of pain. Leo looked up at him. What's wrong with you? Early-stage liver cancer. Ethan shook his head, a helpless smile on his face. It's still treatable. Don't look like that you're so lucky. Maybe I'll be lucky too. You're still so young. How did you get this kind of disease? Who knows, he said faintly. Maybe it's retribution. Even heaven couldn't stand his cruelty to Alina, so it gave him a heart-wrenching punishment. Leo knew that saying anything now would be futile. He was silent for a long time before saying, if there's anything I can do to help, just let me know. He wasn't the type to hold grudges. Ethan knew this, which made the despicable pain in his heart even clearer. This was probably why Alina had fallen for Leo so quickly. He could understand, but he felt the unspeakable bitterness rising from his stomach to his esophagus, making him want to vomit. Don't tell Alina, Ethan said quietly, his voice very soft. Congratulations on your wedding. Come to our wedding alive, Leo replied. Ethan gently closed the door to the hospital room, and that's when Alina woke up. The moment she opened her eyes, she was looking for Leo. She looked up and met a pair of gentle, smiling eyes. Leo was clearly awake, leaning against the pillow and looking at her. He said in a low voice, You've worked hard, my Alina. Tears instantly welled up in her eyes. Alina fought back her tears and said loudly, You scared me to death, but her hand still held Leo's tightly, unwilling to let go. Was someone just here? Alina looked at him suspiciously. And why didn't you call a nurse when you woke up? You need your injections and medicine changed. I just woke up, no one was here. Leo couldn't speak much, his chest still felt a dull pain. Has Alina eaten? I have. They texted his parents to let them know he was awake and doing well. After the nurse checked on him and gave some instructions, Leo held her hand tightly the whole time, as if he knew she had been terrified. The two of them ate something together in this lovey-dovey way. In the afternoon, Leo was too weak and fell asleep. Before he did, he managed to ask Alina where their marriage certificates were. The situation had been so chaotic that for a moment, Alina couldn't remember where she had put them. She could only say that Mrs. Graham had taken them home, and after coaxing Leo to sleep, she replied to Mrs. Graham's message. Chapter 31. Auntie, have you seen our marriage certificates? No, you were holding them so tightly, we didn't dare take them. Mrs. Graham said she would come to take over from Alina in the evening. Alina suppressed her doubts and could only take care of Leo for now. He couldn't be left alone, and besides, even if the marriage certificates were really lost, they could just get new ones. And that booklet was covered in both of their blood. To encounter such a thing on a day they had chosen so carefully, Alina couldn't help but smile bitterly. Not only would the wedding have to be postponed, but many of the invitations with the date already written would have to be redone. Leo had nothing to do while he was recovering, so this would be a good way for him to pass the time. The days passed slowly. Mrs. Graham was handling the compensation from the truck driver. In reality, for the Graham family, this amount of money was nothing. The driver himself had passed away, so the negotiations were all in vain. It was just pitiful that Leo was so bored lying in his hospital bed that he wanted to cry. Mrs. Graham had ordered him not to be discharged until he was fully recovered. He would kiss Alina's hand and say pitifully, There's nothing you need to do right now, just stay with me more. Alina smiled and said, Don't you remember it's almost your birthday? I'm preparing a gift for you. At these words, Leo's eyes lit up with anticipation. He stopped complaining about Alina being out all the time and started counting the days on his fingers. The day of his birthday was also the day of his discharge. The leaves outside the gate had already turned from green to yellow. Summer was over. Leo's body had recovered better than ever. He saw Alina standing at the gate with a large bouquet of flowers, smiling at him. His eyes immediately lit up, and he ran over. He embraced both the person and the flowers. His beloved woman was smiling at him from amidst the flowers. Leo no longer cared what his gift was. This was the best gift he could have received. The grandparents had long prepared a welcome home celebration for them. Elinor also presented the birthday gift she had prepared for Leo. She thought it was very cliché and was a little embarrassed, a blush appearing on her cheeks, giving her a very delicious, vivid beauty. When Leo saw this, he no longer cared if the gift was gold or silver, it was not as precious. He was about to lean in and kiss her. Elinor gently pushed him away, revealing the jade pendant in her hand, and smiled, her eyes squinting. "I got this from a master to keep you safe. From now on, Leo will surely be successful in everything." He knew about this jade pendant. It was from a temple in the next city that was said to be very effective. It was usually sought by elders for their frail children to wear. Leo felt a little embarrassed being treated like a child, but he also felt that Elinor was really good to him. It went without saying how difficult this item was to obtain. Chapter 32, the grandparents were also surprised by her devotion, smiling so much they couldn't close their mouths. They ordered Leo to put it on quickly, so in his 28th year, Leo was still wearing a child's Buddha pendant. In the evening, after the guests had left, Leo pulled Elinor onto his lap, bit her lip, and said fiercely, "You don't see me as a child, do you?" Elinor just smiled and didn't speak, avoiding his grinding teeth and lips. Leo then kissed her ear, her cheek, until her face was flushed and her eyes were watery, laughing and dodging. Leo, Elinor cupped his face, begging him to stop, and then said seriously, "I love you. Have I not told you that I love you yet?" This was indeed Elinor's first confession, and the effect was astonishing. Leo immediately stopped moving, as if he had been frozen. He didn't speak for a long time. Elinor touched his face and said it again. "I love you too." After a long time, Leo finally buried his head in her neck, and wet, hot tears fell. "I've always loved you." The wedding was back on the agenda. During his hospital stay, Leo had written many invitations, which finally came in handy. When Elinor was checking the guest list, she saw an unexpected name and was speechless. "Are we inviting Ethan Hunt?" She thought Leo would throw a tantrum and not want him to come, but he seemed very happy about it. "Yes, let him witness that you've completely chosen me." "All right," Elinor pouted childishly for a rare moment. She hadn't seen Ethan since that slap in the hospital. She had suspected that he had taken the blood-stained marriage certificate, but now there was no way to ask. Maybe she would ask on the wedding day. The news on TV would occasionally report on the traffic accident from that day. Every time Elinor saw it, she would feel uneasy. She had recently asked Leo to take the subway to work, and he had even agreed to her request. The president of the mighty Graham Corporation, squeezing onto the subway with a bunch of commuters every day. The image was quite amusing. Elinor called Daisy. Their original wedding date was almost 2 months ago. She didn't know if it was too late to invite her to be a bridesmaid now, but Daisy didn't mind at all. "Miss Vance, I've started a new job. I'm a florist at a flower shop. I love this job so much, and the manager doesn't mind that I'm clumsy." This job really suited Daisy. Even Elinor thought so. She was a simple girl, and perhaps a flower shop with its less complicated business model was her way of life. "Then your flower shop can be in charge of the flowers for our wedding," Elinor laughed. "Can you give me the manager's number?" Really? If I land such a big deal, I'll definitely get a lot of commission, thank you, Miss Vance." Chapter 33, Elinor still remembered that on the way to City Hall, Leo had said he wanted to tell her a secret. "How do you still remember that?" he said with a helpless smile, the jade pendant on his chest glinting in the sunlight. "It seems Elinor is a very vengeful person. I'll have to be careful not to provoke you." Elinor thought he was being ridiculous and gently punched him in the chest. The man immediately made an exaggerated expression of pain, clutching his chest. "It hurts." She was startled and immediately leaned over, worriedly placing her hand on his chest and rubbing it, afraid that she had aggravated his old injury. But Leo's expression was still a mischievous grin. Elinor knew she had been tricked and said helplessly, "Are you going to tell me or not, you childish ghost? If you don't, I'm leaving." I'll tell you," Leo quickly begged for mercy. His favorite thing to do was to hold Elinor in his arms, and he was about to do it again. "But you can't get angry, and you can't leave me." It was a very old-fashioned story of unrequited love. Even with her powerful memory, Elinor couldn't remember a man she had met by chance 5 or 6 years ago. At that time, Leo was only 24, and he had just been let loose by his father after graduating from college. This wasn't considered hardship for the Graham family, but it was indeed a very difficult period of training. He couldn't immediately learn the rules and rhetoric of the dinner table. He drank every glass of white wine that was handed to him, and soon he couldn't hold on any longer. Amidst the calls of young Mr. Graham, Leo plunged his head into the sink and threw up everything he had eaten that night. That was perhaps his most pathetic moment. Stomach acid burned his esophagus and throat repeatedly. After he finished vomiting food, even his nasal cavity was filled with a chaotic mixture of liquor. Even now, when Leo thought about it, he felt that even he wouldn't have helped himself. But Alina did. She was probably talking business with Ethan that day. When she passed by the sink, she saw this utterly pathetic young man. Perhaps she thought of her younger siblings at home, or perhaps she thought of a younger version of herself. She extended a helping hand. Just a wet wipe and a glass of hot water were enough to make the then besieged Leo endlessly grateful. In his blurry, shaking vision, he saw a delicate and beautiful face. The woman's expression was faint, but her actions were very gentle. Even when she got some dirt on her, she just frowned slightly. Leo felt very sorry and said sorry over and over again. The other person just helped him sit down on a stool to rest. I'll pay you back, he said, slurring his words. Give me your contact information. It's okay. After a moment of hesitation, Alina still said, get some hangover medicine, you don't have to drink so fast. Only a greenhorn would let their glass stay empty. Aren't you just waiting for others to pour for you? Chapter 34. Leo couldn't quite hear what she was saying, only catching the keyword greenhorn. He thought of his father who had casually handed him the company to manage, and his eyes reddened. I'm only 24, why do I have to manage this? I don't want to drink anymore, he whimpered, which made Alina laugh. If you really don't want to drink, then don't. Like you said, you're still young, you can do anything. At that time, Alina didn't know that she was comforting a future young and promising president, nor did she know how long Leo would remember her words. From then on, he was no longer timid in his actions, and he wouldn't drink wine he didn't want to drink. He transformed rapidly, becoming a seasoned business elite, but he couldn't find any number left by Alina. This wait lasted for a year. The next time he saw Alina was at Ethan's banquet. Leo recognized the woman he had been dreaming of for a long time at a glance. He had been too drunk at the time and had missed her. All he remembered was a beautiful, gentle face and the faint scent on her. Leo looked at the toasting in front of him, his heart filled with anxiety. He wanted to go up to Alina immediately and ask, "What's your name? Do you remember me?" But as soon as the banquet was over, she helped Ethan leave. He followed them like a ghost. Downstairs, the hall was full of guests. Ethan was very drunk and kissed Alina at the top of the stairs. Leo didn't know what else could describe his feelings besides unrequited love. His eyes were so sore and swollen that they turned red. He had to leave in embarrassment, feeling resentful. "Why didn't Ethan tell us he's dating someone?" he said angrily. Sneaking into a relationship is so unfair. His friend looked at him, amused. Since when is the young master of the Hunt family dating someone? Isn't it his assistant? Assistant? His friend chuckled. Young master, you're too naive. Sleeping with an assistant counts as dating? Haven't you heard the saying, when there's work, the assistant does it? When there's no work, you do the assistant. Leo looked at the winking face, and a surge of anger rose in his heart. He thought of the elegant and gentle woman at the dinner table and punched his friend in the face. Later, his father personally went to the man's house to apologize, but he never had any contact with that friend again. But in the many years that followed, Leo never heard Ethan say that Alina was his girlfriend. Chapter 35. Why would you willingly stay by his side but not even look at me? Leo thought, I would love you with all my love. But how could he not see that Alina truly loved Ethan? Leo had prayed for a long time at that very effective temple next door. On the first day of every year, he would go to offer the first incense, silently sending his wishes to the gods and Buddhas. He waited, and finally, one day Alina walked up to him and said she wanted to give him the rest of her life. Leo thought to himself, I must remember to go back and give thanks. 5 years passed in a few words from his mouth. He looked at the face of the person in his arms with apprehension. Alina pursed her lips and said nothing. Leo's heart panicked. Alina looked up at this moment and said seriously, You must remember to go back and give thanks." It's really effective, he couldn't help but laugh and nodded. Eleanor knew the pain of unrequited love all too well. She had loved Ethan one-sidedly for so many years, just as Leo had loved her for so many years. Fortunately, now their wishes had come true. Eleanor couldn't help but ask him, what if I had stayed by Ethan's side? What if I had gotten together with him? The hand on her waist tightened, but Leo said, if you are happy, I am happy. Love is doing your best and often feeling that you owe something. During their time together, Leo would occasionally wonder if he had done something wrong. It was obvious that Ethan still loved Eleanor, but he was unwilling to lose Eleanor's warm embrace again. Eleanor chuckled, turned around, and cupped Leo's face with her hands, saying seriously, being by your side is the greatest happiness. To hear those words was enough, Leo thought. Everything was proceeding in an orderly manner. The bridal shop where Eleanor had tried on her dress also delivered the wedding dress to the Grahams as promised. Soon, it was 2 days before the wedding. The makeup artist and bridesmaids were all asleep. The villa was empty and quiet. Leo had gone to another house to stay temporarily. For some reason, Eleanor always felt a little flustered. She walked out of the room with a glass of water, looking at the moonlight under the dark clouds. Her phone suddenly rang. It was an unknown number. Eleanor's heart skipped a beat. She instinctively rejected the call. A moment later, the unknown number called again. She had no choice but to answer. The other end was silent for a long time, with only the sound of static. As if by a stroke of genius, she suddenly realized who it was and said softly, with a hint of probing, "Ethan Hunt." The man grunted in acknowledgement, his voice low. "I thought you wouldn't answer my call." Eleanor was still resentful about his refusal to donate blood when Leo was in critical condition, but after all these days, she had come to terms with it. She said helplessly, "I was wrong back then. I shouldn't have hit you." Chapter 36, helping was a kindness, not helping was his right. Besides, every time she asked Ethan for a favor, she owed him one more. Now that Leo was safe and sound, that was enough. They were silent for a long time. Eleanor heard Ethan's breathing was a bit rapid, one breath light, one heavy, which made her a little flustered. "Ethan Hunt." "Eleanor." Their voices collided. Eleanor didn't know what she wanted to say, so she closed her mouth and waited for him to speak. After a long time, she heard Ethan say very softly, "Do you hate me?" Eleanor was taken aback. She found it hard to say whether she hated Ethan or not. In the end, she was the one who had wasted her own time. Ethan had never made her any promises. It was her own wishful thinking, wanting to warm this cold piece of ice. She had failed. She had left. So she replied in an equally soft voice, as if afraid of disturbing something, "I don't hate you, but I don't love you anymore." "Ethan Hunt, I don't believe that in these 9 years, you never felt how much I loved you. For you to tell me now that you love me, it's really too late. Leo is a good man. The pain from the chemotherapy and the lesion was nothing compared to this. Time was truly the most ruthless thing." Ethan closed his eyes, but he also felt a little fortunate. He had seen that timid but determined girl who tried her best to stand out when he was 26. He had made Eleanor his woman when he was 27, and then abandoned her at 33, turning his attention to others. After 9 years of being together day and night, they were about to become strangers. But what could he do? Whether it was love or pain, Eleanor had become an indispensable part of his life. He still wanted to be a part of her life. Just the thought of his future no longer having his involvement made Ethan feel a deep sense of regret. But his condition was deteriorating so quickly. The cancer cells were spreading rapidly throughout his body, threatening to devour him. Ethan felt that being able to attend Eleanor's wedding was already a blessing, so he smiled and tried his best to suppress the urge to cough. "Okay, I understand. I wish you a happy wedding. I'll be there." Eleanor also smiled. It was hard to let bygones be bygones, but at least they could nod and say hello when they met in the future. "You must come." After hanging up the phone, Eleanor realized that the number Ethan had called from was different from the first missed call. She didn't pay much attention to it, thinking it was some kind of scam call. Chapter 37, but the next morning, this number persistently called again. "Who is this?" Daisy had moved in a day early. She was considered to be on Eleanor's side, so she was staying in the same villa with her. "Miss Vance, you have a call." The makeup artist was giving Eleanor a facial treatment to prepare for her makeup for the wedding tomorrow. Alina had to lie back with her head tilted up while the artist applied a mask, making it very inconvenient. The phone was ringing urgently. She had no choice but to say, "Daisy, can you answer it for me?" "Okay, Miss Vance," Daisy said, taking on the task with a serious expression. She answered the phone. "Hello, who is this?" Her brow furrowed, and after a while she lowered the phone, looking troubled. "Miss Vance, I can't understand." The person is speaking aggressively and quickly, not with a local accent. Alina's heart began to pound. Daisy walked over and put the phone on speaker. "Is this Alina Vance?" The person on the other end said in Mandarin with a heavy accent. "Get Alina Vance on the phone." No one could see the color drain from Alina's face. She forced herself to remain calm and took the phone. "You have the wrong number. Please don't call again." "Alina, I can tell it's you, Alina. It's me, your father. How can you not answer your father's call?" The makeup artist and Daisy exchanged a look. Alina quickly hung up the phone. Her hands were trembling slightly. She took a deep breath and said to the makeup artist, "Please continue." The makeup artist could only nod timidly. This phone call completely ruined Alina's good mood. She knew that since he had managed to find her phone number, her father had probably found out her other information as well. They hadn't seen each other in almost 10 years, and he showed up right before her wedding. Besides coming to cause trouble, Alina couldn't think of any other possibility. But the jade pendant and Leo's excited eyes were still clear in her mind. Alina couldn't bring herself to tell Leo about these things at this time. It would definitely spoil the mood. He was so looking forward to the wedding. She could only hope he would come a couple of days later, giving her time to deal with it. More than 10 years ago, Alina had graduated from high school with excellent grades and was admitted to one of the most famous universities in the country. But her father had said, "What's the use of a girl studying so much?" So she had resolutely left home with her ID card and admission notice. She hadn't taken a single penny from her family in her 4 years of college, nor had she ever gone back. Now that her father had appeared, it was definitely not to bless Alina. It was undoubtedly to extort a bride price from her. Chapter 30, Alina didn't want him to succeed. Daisy looked at her worried face and suddenly felt that she had to do something for her. The wedding decorations on the lawn were magnificent, and the flowers from Daisy's flower shop did their job perfectly, propping up the grand scene. The grandparents praised her endlessly. Today, Alina was beautifully dressed. She wore the wedding dress she had chosen with Leo, and the makeup artist had used her best skills to apply exquisite makeup on her. "Didn't you sleep well last night?" The makeup artist gently applied eye cream under her faint dark circles. Alina nodded, distracted. She tried to immerse herself in the joy of the wedding, but she was still worried about that phone call. But everything proceeded as usual. The guests had almost all arrived. Under Leo's smiling, reddened gaze, Alina picked up her skirt and walked towards him, step by step. Accompanied by the wedding march and the cheers of the guests, they walked through the white veil, through the flowers, under the mistletoe full of bells and the blessings of friends and family, towards the pastor. Alina's gaze anxiously scanned the crowd. Leo, beside her, reassuringly touched her hand and whispered, "I'm so happy." So happy it felt like an illusion. Alina whispered back, "Me too." There was no doubt she loved Leo, but she noticed that someone seemed to be missing from the wedding. Ethan had said he would come. Was he delayed by something? The pastor's voice interrupted her chaotic thoughts. He said with compassion and gentleness, "Mr. Leo Graham, do you take this woman to be your wife, to live together in holy matrimony? Will you love her, comfort her, honor and keep her, in sickness and in health, in poverty and in wealth, and forsaking all others, be faithful to her as long as you both shall live?" "I do." Leo's unwavering voice pulled her thoughts back to the present. Before her was the man she loved most, and in the future she would build a family with him. The pastor asked Alina the same question. Alina said firmly, "I do." They exchanged rings and kissed happily. The wedding was halfway through. Alina was still toasting. Even though she had been out of the workplace for half a year, she was still as impressive as ever, especially on such a happy day. Daisy watched, stunned, and said worriedly, "Miss Vance, drink less?" Leo smiled. "Yes, you still have to spend the wedding night with me. You're not allowed to get drunk, Alina." Chapter 39. Alina gave him a reproachful look. "Daisy is still here." Daisy stuck out her tongue. "I'm not a child anymore." The butler suddenly hurried over, glanced at Alina, and then whispered something to Leo. Leo's face changed. He took Alina's hand and said in a low voice, "I have something urgent here, you—" Alina frowned, but his expression was so bad. The guests were basically all seated and eating now, so the groom's temporary departure wouldn't cause too much of a stir. She nodded at him. Daisy's pupils trembled. She quickly smiled and said, "Miss Vance, I'll go toast with you." Leo walked quickly, the butler trotting beside him, whispering urgently, "Mr. Hunt has been sent to the hospital now. The man who claims to be the lady's father has been taken to the police station by us. I'll talk to my friends over there later. We'll get him the heaviest sentence possible, but let's not worry about that now." Drive to the hospital, quickly of course. Ethan had come to Alina's wedding. He had lost so much weight recently that even his once custom-fitted suit was now loose, making it difficult to hide his frail, sickly body. Ethan had to have a new one custom made overnight, and it was finally ready just before the wedding. He hadn't been invited as a special guest, so he just put a small flower in his breast pocket. It had a very faint, sweet scent, like the scent of Alina's hair. Ethan received a call from Daisy. "Mr. Hunt, I don't know who to tell about this. Miss Vance doesn't seem to want to tell anyone. Her father seems to have come looking for her." Having heard so many stories about Alina at the company, Daisy also knew about her sad family background. The more she thought about it, the more something felt wrong. She had no power to stop it, so she had to ask Ethan for help. Ethan was the first to arrive at the wedding. He stood like a silent sculpture, not far from the Grahams' villa, somewhat in a daze. Alina was getting married. The one who would spend the rest of her life with her would be Leo, not him. He watched as flowers were thrown into the sky, fireworks shot up into the clouds, and the wedding march played in the castle-like villa. But he could only be a loyal guard. Will Alina look for me among the guests? Will she be willing to accept my blessing? As Ethan was thinking this, he saw a man with a fruit knife sneaking into the Grahams' house and quickly rushed forward. Chapter 40, but he forgot that his body was no longer as strong as it was before his illness. The sharp blade sank into his body, and a wave of pain spread through him. The security guards swarmed in and caught the man. His face was contorted in a grimace, and he cursed. "Who the hell are you? I'm going in to teach my daughter a lesson. What's it to you?" Ethan almost wanted to laugh out loud. He felt his life quickly draining away with the blood flowing from his abdomen, while inside the castle, the pastor's question echoed. "Do you take this woman to be your wife, to live together in holy matrimony?" He looked at the clear blue sky, the leisurely white clouds, and murmured, "I do." The doctor frowned, looking at the panting Leo, and shook his head. "He's not in any major danger for now. He was brought in just in time, and the bleeding has stopped. But the patient's cancer cells are spreading too quickly. Even if he's saved, he probably has at most half a year left." Leo's head was buzzing. He looked at the doctor in disbelief. "Just a few months ago, you told me it was only in the early stages." The doctor looked at him strangely. Early stages? Even in the early stages, he would need a liver resection to recover. He's been receiving conservative treatment, which is useless. The only reason he wouldn't undergo a liver resection was because he wanted to attend the wedding. But in the end, he couldn't attend. Leo closed his eyes and slammed his fist against the tiled wall of the hospital. He seemed to feel no pain. "The patient is awake," a nurse hurried out. "The family can go in and talk to him. His will to live is very weak." Leo's legs felt weak. After disinfecting himself, he walked into the hospital room and looked at the haggard Ethan. "I'll call Alina." His voice was hoarse. "Just wait a little longer. Didn't you say you wanted to see our wedding?" "No," Ethan coughed lightly. "Don't call her. Don't let her see." Alina only needed to remember a spirited Ethan, a cold and powerful Ethan, not a bedridden sick man. "Go back quickly. The wedding can't be without a groom. She's smart. She'll get suspicious." Alina looked at Leo and couldn't help but pinch his cheek, saying angrily, "Why the long face? You don't like me now that you've married me?" Leo held her tightly. "I love you. Don't change the subject. I love you very, very much." Alina sighed and hugged him back, her movements gentle. "Me too." That same year, Alina Vance became pregnant and Ethan Hunt passed away. Before he died, Ethan had only one last wish. "May heaven bless my Alina, that she may have a life of peace and joy, year after year."